yet I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?
Welcome to Against the Grain, where curiosity leads the way.
Geoff, so good to see you, mate. Thanks so much for joining me. It's great to see you.
Hey, Gary. Happy to be here.
And last time we spoke, it was me being interviewed with you and Scott.
Yeah, it was so wonderful, that chat. Yeah, thanks for joining us. You know, I think, isn't it great, like, just to meet like-minded people on the path with these interests, you know?
It really is. It really, really is. I think you need it, actually. I think the soul needs it, doesn't it? To know that, you know, you've got some kindred spirits around you that see the world the same way as you do.
Yeah, definitely. You bet.
So, well, let's dive straight in. Okay, you're from Ireland. Was you born and bred in Ireland?
I mean, I'm like from Ireland, and not even that. I'm from Dublin. I mean, my grandfather, my great grandfather, on both sides, all from the capital, Dublin. You know, as far back as my family tree goes, it's really weird, actually, and I don't typically have a very strong Dublin accent, strangely. Like, some people think I'm like even not from Dublin because of my accent. But yeah, I'm like as Irish as it gets, to be honest, you know. Geoff Fitzpatrick, you know. When I go to America, they have a great old laugh at me, you know. I mean, it couldn't be more Irish, you know. So yeah, that's definitely been the cultural conditioning machine in this lifetime for me, at least, you know.
I'm ashamed to say I've never been to Ireland.
Really?
I've been to so many places, but I've never been to Ireland. It will happen. But it's. And
you live in Bristol?
I live in Bristol. Yeah.
Like it's like 45 minutes on a plane from Bristol to Dublin. Yeah. Like it's so near.
It's so near.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it because, you know, I want to experience. I don't drink alcohol very much, but I've got to have a pint of Guinness in Ireland.
Yeah.
Because I hear it takes half an hour to pour.
It does, and it's a wonderful drink, I have to say. And kind of like you, I don't drink alcohol anymore. Like I did for a long time. When I kind of got into the meditation, and you know, my life took a turn, and it just fell away. You know.
Yeah.
But good news is Guinness have now brought out this 0.0 alcohol. I mean, real drinkers kind of slag it off, but it's actually perfect, beautiful, as good as it gets. So you can have all the benefits of Guinness now without the alcohol.
Oh,
you know,
I didn't
so it's
know
called
that.
Guinness 0.0, yeah. So whatever technology they've developed, it's like pristine.
Oh, that's it now. So, and the other thing is obviously the folk music. I want to go in and you know, the live music.
There's a great cultural kind of history here, you know, like folk storytelling, folk music in particular, you know, the music, the arts. I think per capita, our concert going, like the amount of concerts we go to as a population is like very, very high in comparison to loads of other European countries, you know. We adore music, particularly live music of all kinds, you know, me included, to be honest.
I've spent a lot of time, I think I mentioned to you when I was on your podcast, I've spent a lot of time in West Africa because I got very interested in the music there.
Beautiful.
And, you know, they've got this culture of just, you know, kicking off and just playing music, and they do music for everything, you know, like when they're bringing in the harvest, they play music, and they've got certain rhythms, and it's all polyrhythmic, and it's 3-time music, much like the way that the Irish music is played in that sort of 12/8 sort of beat. And
little offbeats, and I love traditional music, to be honest, kind of all kinds. I bet you I'm not familiar with West African music, but like I love world music, I love folk. I mean, music is a massive part of my life, I have to say. You know, I mean, across the spectrum, from psychedelic trance to Smashing Pumpkins, who I just went to recently here, was a mind-blowing gig, you know,
really?
To like traditional Irish music in its most like celebrated form. You know, it's a rhythmic, beautiful, spectacular soundscape that I adore. It's in my DNA, definitely.
Where would we be without music, eh?
Yeah, you bet.
So, well, we'll come on to the connections with geometry and music as we progress in this. But so you run an advertising agency, is that right?
Yeah, I've got kind of like 2 tracks in my life, you know, like a sort of a parallel existence, you know. So Like, I mean, on the surface, I'm a pretty conventional dude, you know, middle class, white, Irish dude, you know. I've got a lovely family. And I, you know, in terms of having to make that work, I have to suck out this thing called, I call it matrix juice, you know. Like for the longest time, I've like, you know, I've struggled with like what conventional reality presents as normal. So like even things like I have to what make this thing called money? Why? Like and to buy a house, and so you know I had to learn, I had to get a job, I had to make money, I had to put the kids through school. You know, so the responsibilities of living in this crazy world demand money. Now I'm kind of lucky because I've never had a job. I've never been employed by anyone. Just after college, I started this kind of very niche advertising business. And I'm quite proud of it now. You know, I've battled with it over the years about like, oh, I should be doing sacred geometry workshops, and surely my contribution can be more than transmitting ads for tequila flavored beer. And, you know, so like I did have like, you know, difficulties actually reconciling what I was doing with my life energy. And then I sort of had a breakthrough of sorts. Somewhere along the way, I started doing the workshops in sand mandalas. And what I realized was I didn't have to be so hooked to the workshops needing to pay my mortgage or my school fees or put food on the table. And it was kind of liberating in a way. Like, so what it meant was I could run my workshops without really worrying about them having to make an income or turn a profit. And it actually became quite a privilege, you know, in a weird way, you know, to be able to do something that is like a true kind of passion from my soul. And then kind of, you know, running ads for Hot Tub Time Machine, the movie. It's not very highbrow, but I was kind of like, does the world really, I mean, Geoff, can't you contribute something of more substance than ads for, you know, and so I did battle with it. Maybe I'm going back a decade and a half now, but I did have that kind of clash about my life has to be meaningful from start to finish, you know, and I found peace with it actually, you know, and I'm kind of glad I did because, you know, the truth is I have a small little team who I cherish. They've been with me like over a decade. There's only 8 of us. And we're very niche. We have a very kind of specialized offer. We do big projections on buildings, and it's quite creative, and it's an enjoyable job actually, you know. And I really am probably most proud of the team I've brought together, who now essentially run it, you know, for themselves and with me. And so that's given me my time back, you know, to focus on those areas that genuinely are kind of more meaningful and do nourish my soul in more of a direct way. And I've been very open with my team and my advertising team. I've kind of explained to them what, you know, what my hope is. And I very much kept a foot in both worlds. And that's what I think that feels right for me in this lifetime. There was a time where I thought, someday this advertising bullshit is all going to end. And I'm going to ride away into the sunset and it'll all be holotropic breathwork and you know, mandala workshops. And like, in a way, I would love if that was the case, you know, I mean, but I'm in my own way, I'm trying to sort of bend my life so that I get more spaciousness to do those workshops, you know. And actually, you know, we might talk about that because, like, can I just keep ranting here? Because there's just something quite significant about what's happening, right? So, like, the truth is I'm grateful to advertising and I've come to peace with it, especially the sort of niche. I call it like a little safety bubble in the matrix, you know, because let's be honest, it's a pretty gruesome, vicious world out there of dog eat dog, and the whole materialistic thing is kind of like very dark and sickening mostly, you know. So to be able to create an oasis where you go into work and you like the people you're with and you care for the people you're with and you want the rising tide to lift everybody with you, it's quite unique in a way, you know. But then when I was like developing my workshops, then my workshops are like really trying to put forward as honest a sharing as I can my passion for how sacred geometry and breath work can radically alter your state of consciousness and help you connect with your inner wisdom. And I think that's the greatest gift we can give each other, is to create a space where we encourage each other to connect with the deepest part of who we are, and then live from there. So that's really my soul's calling, to be honest. And everything I do, whether it's a mandala workshop, whether it's a sacred geometry meditation, holotropic breathwork, all these different techniques, you know, it all boils down to this very simple thing, which is like, I believe the person who knows what's best for Gary is Gary. You know what I mean? I don't know what's right for you, but like, I'd love to hang out, and then, like, you know, we do some deep meditations, and then you might find out something that's meaningful for you. And then if you get to share that in a group where people are doing the same thing, you kind of build this frequency field, which is just, it's just radical. And I'm so passionate about it, you know? Anyway, in recent years, like particularly around the pandemic, I've been trying to work out, how do I really share this with the world? And like, why am I doing it? And what do I really want to do, right? And I've been battling with, how do I market this? How do I package it? How do I price it, right? And because I'm an advertising guy, I've learned, you know, web marketing, and I've gone to some great people who have shared all these techniques about building an audience, being your authentic self, build a membership community, you know, then charge a monthly fee, all of which is very valid, by the way. And I wouldn't knock anybody who's doing that, by the way. I think it's great, you know, but there was something in me that just wasn't resonating with that, with the model. I think it's maybe I'm so beleaguered by my time in advertising that I was just like, you know what? I just want to sort of put something truly from my heart out into the world. And those who find it, and those who don't, well, you know, maybe our paths won't cross, and that's okay, you know? And so I've just recently had this breakthrough. So I have this kind of like online mandala meditation where I take sacred geometric visuals and I turn them into this kind of motion visual journey. And there's some guidelines, and it's a really beautiful way to go very, very deep, using sacred geometry as kind of the vehicle to carry you inward, right? Yeah. And I was since the pandemic, you know, I had a bit of time to look at the new, you know, future, or what I wanted to do. But I was struggling, is the truth. I was like pricing it, packaging it. I also have difficulty with like centrally controlled algorithms, like, you know, all of the way the internet is now owned by 5 or 6 companies. It kind of nauseates me a bit. And I find that a lot of the, you know, the dominant algorithms, they are very reductive. What I mean by that is they reduce us down to these very narrow formats, you know, 59-second videos. And if you scroll on Instagram, for example, and I follow all my friends who I know are like beautiful people, right, doing amazing work actually, but when I scroll on a centrally owned algorithm, it's so commodified and it's so reduced to kind of, it loses its kind of essence in the buy my thing, or buy my meditation, or do my yoga, or do this fitness thing, or this Pilates thing, or this intermittent fasting, or this new way to, you know, and I'm just like, it's kind of, it actually does make me a little bit nauseous, to be honest. Too. This spiritual supermarket, you know, and I feel sad a little bit because, like, actually, because I only have a few followers on Instagram, and most of them are my friends, and I love what they do. Like, these are amazing people. But when I look at do you know that dude Marshall McLuhan, who said that the medium is the message, you know? I really like that idea that, like, the very fact you're transmitting something through like a centrally controlled algorithm already says so much about what's being communicated. And in a way, I would say the medium probably says more than what the message is, if you like, you know? Definitely. So I've had a kind of a breakthrough, right? And this was really big for me personally. Like, so with my mandala thing, because, you know, thankfully now I have the luxury of being able, I'm not a millionaire, I'm not like all financially free, but I have enough to pay my mortgage and run my family, which is all I need. I don't need yachts or big cars or any crap like that. I'm kind of over the material thing, you know? But, you know, once I can meet my responsibilities, then I'm free to do what I want, you know? And so I then hit this confrontation with myself where I was like, Geoff, what are you doing with your whole mandala trip? Like, are you trying to kind of like build a little niche business that you can monetize, build a community, and then, you know, build a following, and then have the entry level course and the €37 course and the €97 course and the $599 course and the deep intensive. And I've played around with all these things and none of them ever felt right, okay? And then I came across this lovely model called value for value, right?
Okay.
And then it was kind of like, do I want to sort of like monetize a small community, or do I truly want to help people and put out my best offering from my heart to everyone and just give it away, right? And so that's a big confrontation, or at least it was for me, with myself. It was like, what am I really doing here? Like, what is all this about? And I was like, you know what? I genuinely just want to help people. Fuck the monetization, you know, fuck all this gimmickry and this marketing.
Yeah.
And the value for value thing is about put your best offer out there, invite people to experience it. And it's not like free or donation or charity. It's quite nuanced, which I like, right? Because it doesn't feel right to be, it's a charity or give a donation or free. It's value for value, which I even think is cooler. And the reason I like it is, I'm going to put all my mandala meditations just out there for free now. And I'm developing them. I'm really passionate about them. I love making them. I love creating. And I just want to reach as many people as I can with that, you know. And if I can help one person, 10 people, 10,000 people, actually the cost of putting a digital meditation out there, which is kind of cool about it, is it doesn't cost me anything to give Gary a meditation than give 10,000 people the same meditation.
Right.
I love that about it. So why don't I just put it out there? Right? And then what you do is you ask in kind of a self-confident way, hey guys, if you got value from that and you'd like to return the value, you're very welcome. And here's a PayPal and here's a, you know, a donation, Bitcoin I quite like as well. And it's like, then you choose whatever the price is. It's in alignment with the value it was for you. So there's no, you choose the price, you know. And so if you got no value from it, then no harm, no foul, you know, I don't expect anything back. Or if you got value from it, but you either don't have the means or you choose not to give value back, that's totally fine as well. And if I can get value to people and help people connect with their inner healers, you know, then I'm like that's the reward I'm seeking. You know, that's the reward I'm seeking. And so I had this kind of breakthrough where I was like, oh my God, that's what I'm going to do. So I'm just at the precipice of this. I'm really quite excited about it, actually, because it was a bit of a, yeah. And I can feel the invigorating passion. It's kind of ignited in me again, because I'm just going to go, hey guys, I got this really cool thing. If you'd like to try it, here it is. You know, like I might ask for an email, maybe even not, to be honest. You know, I don't mind. I haven't totally refined all the details, but the spirit of value for value, I just love that model, you know, and it's so different. It's so fresh, you know.
So there are a number of things that came to mind when you were saying all of that. I mean, I've been down the same journey. I really, really have. The conflict of, I mean, you know, as you know, I was working in the legal profession up until 1996, and then life changed. You know, head went, nervous breakdown, life change. I'd done loads of martial arts training when I was in my from 5 up to 20, and then for 10 years tried to make, you know, material things in the world and build everything, and was building it on the wrong foundations in many ways, and so then life changed, and you know, looked at Tai Chi again and meditation and all these kind of things and New Age, and that's how I bounced into the crop circles. And then learnt a great deal about what you just described as this dark side of the world, you know, where this materialism, and it's very shallow, and we've watched it go down this rabbit hole with the advent of, or the progression of technology that's led us all to this kind of medium of communication, which has its benefits. There you are in Ireland, here I am in the UK, and we're able to have this live chat, Star Trek style. The dream of it, wasn't it, in the 70s? Imagine that, if we could pick up these devices, and here we are doing it. But this whole thing about reward for what we do, there's this double-edged sword, isn't there? For example, I used to take the kids to these rainbow circle festivals, right? You know, in the summer we didn't have much money, and so it was like, okay, let's go. I used to teach Tai Chi, get a ticket for free because I was a teacher. I used to have to teach for, I think about an hour or two a day, one class in the morning, one class in the evening, sort of deal, right? And I'd get the whole week, and me and the kids could go there for free, right? And
Lovely.
so people who came, they had what they called a magic hat, and so you could either exchange 3 or 4 hours of work working in the kitchen, peeling spuds, or doing whatever, or you could work on the gate, helping people in, work in the car park, some function where you gave your energy for the price of a ticket. Or if you had money, you could put some money in the magic hat, and that would fund whatever we need to fund to buy whatever we need to buy. There was another side of it where it was a ticket. Everybody had to buy a ticket. It was very commercial. The people that were there hired to do the workshops had to be at their workshop on time. They were paid a fee. It was very business-like. And there was this whole other model. And there were these
Is this the same festival?
Same festival.
Same festival.
So the facilitators of say the astrology camp, which would have a load of astrologers there, would say, okay, we're doing this on a ticket because they were quite famous astrologers there, people who published in the newspapers and so on, and they wanted to earn the money, or they needed, they wanted value for their time in terms of monetary rewards and so on. And then there were other people who would facilitate the camps and say, I want to do this camp on a magic hat basis, and it would be up to the facilitator, the person that I ran a kids camp one year and did it on the magic hat basis, and it was actually a roaring success.
I get you.
So that was really interesting. And the other thing that came to my mind was how much time you put into developing all what you've developed, right? Your life energy that's gone into building the skills that you have with the holotropic breath work and the meditation, the money you've spent or sacrificed earning by going to learn all of that, and the value you get in return. Because ultimately, although monetary is it's just a token, we've agreed, it's nothing really, is it? It's just, but your life energy isn't nothing.
Correct.
And what you've put into something, and the value you give to it, matters, I think. And I've wrestled with this over the years, right? What do I charge? So I'll give you another example. When I was in Mexico, I had a big falling out with the guy I worked for there, because I'd spent 27 years learning all the things I learned about the crop circles. He paid me a sum of money to write a bunch of episodes for a TV show, which was then syndicated to the History Channel in all over South America, which he made an absolute fortune for and paid me a pittance. Oh. So I was happy to share the knowledge I had. I wanted the world to know about the cool things I'd learnt about the geometry of all this stuff, and and the history of crop circles. And I was when I wrote all the episodes,
getting it out there was almost a reward in itself. Yeah.
But someone was exploiting me.
Yeah.
And taking it and then remarketing it for an absolute fortune. And that happens all over, doesn't it, with artists?
It's the way of the world.
It's the way of the world.
Yeah.
And so when you're a victim of it, you reflect and go, did I do myself a disservice there?
Yeah.
Because people don't tend to value things that are for free.
Yeah.
They tend to value things that they can go to their friends and say, do you know how much that cost me? That cost me 20 grand.
Yeah. It's like the Tony Robbins workshop, if you go for the elite ticket, it's 20 grand. Oh, must be good,
Must be good.
And so, and you're really, so here's where my breakthrough went to, right? I was kind of like, why am I doing this? And what is the reward I'm seeking, right? And like, genuine, it's a nice place to get to in life, is that like, I truly want to help people connect with their inner wisdom. And that would be enough of a reward for me. So let's say I got 10,000 people, and ideally they all get value from it. That would be great. I'm sure that's not going to happen. Not everyone's going to get value from it. But let's say, like, if 20% of that 10,000 got real value from it, and they all got some deep connection with the most significant part of who we are as fields of consciousness, and I played some small contribution to helping people have those connections, then that is the reward I'm seeking from now on, with this work. And if nobody pays me, that's totally secondary. That's fine. I'm like, if they're really getting, and I mean, it has to be a non-bullshit proper activation with the source of who they are. And, you know, maybe out of the 2,000, if 5% gave something, that would be more than enough, you know? But that's become secondary. It's gone down in importance, you know? And my desire to, because you see, I have this enormous belief and faith and passion in the huge kind of untapped potential of consciousness that we only access by going inward. That's basically what I'm all about, you know? And like, it is truly radical and properly life-changing, you know, when you begin to go, oh my God, like we are infinite fields of consciousness that are never born and never die. I mean, fuck, like that's a trip, you know?
It's a massive
and
trip.
You can go on all day long about that, and it means nothing until people connect with that for themselves.
Right.
And then the lights go on, and it's like, whoa.
So
like,
two other examples. Sorry to interrupt you. So two other. So when I went to, I wanted to give people that experience, right?
Yeah.
Really badly. So in 1998, I took up West African drumming. Okay.
Oh, cool.
And I had an experience with polyrhythmic music, where it altered my state of consciousness, and you get that matrix feeling, right? If you're the music's going incredibly fast, and where you have to put your part in the ensemble is milliseconds, it seems, right? But you just feel like you're going slowly, and just
wow.
it's amazing. Okay.
Wow.
And all of a sudden your breath changes, your breath deepens, you feel your body's connection with the ground, with gravity, and all of those experiences, right, that come from what is this traditional music from West Africa. And I was immediately turned on about it, right? So I raised some money, and I headed off to West Africa, and I spent 2 months studying with a musician's band in West Africa, getting up every day, practicing for 4 hours. I bought 20 drums, and I came back and I said, I'm going to teach kids to play these drums. Right?
Cool.
I want kids to have these experiences. So I met up with this other musician guy, and he said to me, right, what you need to do is set up a website, and you need to have a silver level and a bronze level and a gold level and all what you described, right?
Yeah.
And I said, I don't want any of that crap.
Yeah.
I just want to give people this experience, right? And you know, it's no, you've got to go down this road. You you need the blue belt and the brown belt and the whole 9 yards. And I resisted, okay? And it didn't work for me. It didn't work. I probably got half a dozen kids, if I was lucky, including my own children. But one of the reasons I did it was because my son, both my sons play the music. One of them plays the African kora.
Oh, cool.
The 21-string harp, and the other one plays djembe. And from the age of...
Is that the long guitar? Is that one?
It's like a guitar.
Actually like a harp.
It's like a guitar, like a sitar. You know, the round part here when it would go on it, but it's played upright. And the strings come down towards you, and you play it with your fingers and your thumbs.
I've seen it, yeah, something similar. There's a band called Afro Celt Sound System, and they kind of play it out front.
That's it.
It sounds like it's that, yeah.
Yeah. So one of my sons plays that. The other son, the eldest boy, played from the age of 8. They both played the drums at first, but then as the second son got older, he gravitated towards kora. So they kind of inspired me to want to teach the children. And I probably gave half a dozen kids, this experience that I wanted to give them, and that was amazing for me to let them realise that, as you just described, consciousness is so much more. The other thing I wanted to raise with you is Wim Hof.
Oh, yeah.
So I've recently started doing ice plunges, and I go into the park. I get up about 5 every morning, and I go into the park here. We've got some waterfalls not far from me, and I go there every morning, and I sit in front. I do my Wim Hof breath work, and I come back and I jump in the ice. And I watched Wim Hof give a podcast recently to Stephen Bartlett on Diary of a CEO.
Uh-huh.
And he said, it's all about exactly what you just said. He said it's all about giving back. Our role here is to share what we've experienced, to give it back without the expectation of anything in return.
Yeah. I'm feeling that now.
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
I love Wim Hof, by the way. I love his work. I'm a huge fan. I think he's an amazing man.
Amazing.
I think he's living in a different plane.
He is.
I got really into his work, like, and went, like, I'm a bit obsessive, Gary, to be honest. So
me
I
too.
can sometimes go all in, and
too.
I might have overdone it because I had a little. I was standing on my head and I was pushing all of the pressure into my like pineal gland and holding my breath for so long and doing all these push-ups and I had a bit of something burst in my back of my throat, you know, and had a bit of a hemorrhage and a small near-death experience. So I've gone back to like cold showers, you know, I love the cold therapy, and I've seen Wim Hof go from kind of like this mad cat dude on a houseboat in Amsterdam, right? So I think I saw him first on a Vice interview years and years ago.
Yeah.
And I liked his vibe. And I still do the cold showers practically every day. You know, I do the breathing, but I was really pushing myself. And he says, in fairness, I think anything that I got wrong is because I didn't follow Wim's guidance, I must say. So I don't want to put any of this on Wim. This was my own silly machismo that I should have known better, to be honest. And I think maybe I get stuff wrong a lot, by the way, Gary, you know. And so very often I get humbled, you know, and
isn't that the lesson? Isn't that the lesson, though, to learn about yourself? You know, it's a bad way to learn about yourself. But you know, because you're looking at, oh God,
I wanted to go further. I wanted to be better. I want
the white knuckle ride. Okay, well, like when I first took psychedelics, it was like, I'm not just going to take a few. I'm going to go for the heroes, don't you know?
Exactly.
And they say about, you know, doing drumming, doing meditation, doing it at, you know, the full moon, and I'm going to. Terence McKenna said, let's line it all up. Let's do it all in one go, right?
Sometimes, well, at least in my case, that's backfired a little bit. You
Me
know?
too.
So I was kind of like, and I think the lesson I got from it was like, there's a power in gentleness, Geoff. You know, that was kind of, there's a power in. It's not about holding your breath beyond what you're capable of doing. It's about withholding your breath for as long as is comfortable. You know, and I wasn't doing that, you know, so I messed up Wim Hof a little bit because I pushed it too much, you know. But I want to share with you one thing. This year, there's a big, huge business kind of success conference, right, for all of the big famous business, you know, Matrix heads. You know, it's a great festival. It's in a big convention centre in Dublin. It's called the Pendulum Summit. You know, it's all Tony Robbins. They've had Deepak Chopra. Great guests. I totally love it, right? I get free tickets because I helped them promote it. The guy that runs it is amazing. And this year they had Wim Hof, right? They had Wim Hof on, and he had to stand up in front of this audience, right, which is like a very conventional kind of office, banking, architects, accountants, you know, that kind of vibe.
Yeah.
And he's a wildcat, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He was able to communicate with the entire audience, like maybe 2,000 people, in this very accessible way that they all got, right? Now, and I was just kind of like, man, that's really impressive. Because, like, let's be honest, I think he's pretty far out there. I think he's kind of living on a different plane.
It must be. And it's not his native language.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
To communicate that effectively when it's not your native language.
It's unbelievable. Now, can I just roll forward? Because this is in the same week. I think it was maybe the morning after I had to meet somebody in a hotel, right? Like up out of Dublin. And I went into this big hotel lobby thing, and there was all TVs around, and there was like, you know, those breakfast TV shows. I don't know what they are, like TVAM or something, you know, and they're kind of like, they talk about how to cook, you know, dinner and breakfast, and they have all these, and they're kind of friendly shows. Who's there? Wim Hof, live from his hot tub in Amsterdam. And he gets out in his shorts and he's like telling people, but what he communicated to the audience watching breakfast TV was like just like this accurate dart that was like perfect for daytime TV. And I'd only seen him with all the business heads like 2 days before, and I was kind of like, dude, you are impressing me. You know what I mean? Like, just because like he pours light out of himself.
He really
you know,
does.
in a way that I mean, maybe he's doing it consciously, but I just think he's so tapped in that
Yeah.
like the truth is flowing through him,
It's flowing through him.
and
Yeah.
wherever he is, it just is evident, and I was like, yeah, I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of that guy, I think he's the real deal.
I really do. I mean,
Yeah.
and it's funny, right? Because I learned something about myself from the years that I kind of avoided him, because I've always had a bit of a fear of water.
Oh, right.
I had some bad experiences when I was young, and it really frightened me with water. And so
Bet.
I've not been a big swimmer. I can swim, but just a little bit. But I've avoided it at all costs. I've done a lot of sauna work, and I'd come out and throw the ice on myself, or I'd do the cold shower. Love that hot and cold thing. But the thought of doing extended ice plunges, when I first heard it and saw the Iceman thing, I thought, no, it's not for me. It's not for me. I just no. And so now I've watched his podcast and thought, this guy's got it. This guy's really got it. And also I love science too. I think science is the study of workability.
Yeah.
When you get real data, real science that doesn't say we've got all the answers, but it says, look, we've done these tests and this keeps repeating, and it's very likely. Somebody explained to me once that science is like a bag of water that you construct, which is your theory, and then you attack it from every angle, and the more it holds water, the more likely it is to be true.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't mean
yeah.
it is true. It just means it's very likely that it's true.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so we're not certain, but we're pretty sure that this is,
That's
and
the
he
other
says
side
that.
to Wim.
He says that.
Yeah, he's brilliant.
Yeah.
And our culture needs to sort of, like, because we all experience those things and we have those kind of deep spiritual, emotional awakenings, but our culture doesn't allow us own them. We have to then justify it with logic, and so science comes in as this kind of like justification for our experiences. I'm actually way over, like, out on the skinniest of skinny branches on the experiencing tree. I don't really care for evidence, proof, or repeatability. So I'd never
But he
stand
does
up.
say that though, doesn't he? He says, okay, when I first jumped in the ice, it was intuition. It was instinct. Something told me, you could have been said, you need to go on medication because you've got a voice in your head telling you to jump in the freezing ice, right?
Yes, yeah.
But look what he's proved now. He's got, it's a bit like coming at things from the other way. Like, for example, when you learn to play African music, they don't sit you down and say, right, you need to know how to draw a quaver. And this is the stave, and this is the treble clef, right? And they bore you to death, right, before you've even picked up the instrument. They just say, pick up the instrument and use it. Right, and get into it, and then we'll teach the other stuff later. Well, Wim's done it like that. He's gone, okay, the instinct stuff got me in the water, and then now the scientists are proving what I had from instinct.
Yeah,
and so the two are coming together.
Yeah, it's so impressive, by the way. It's so impressive. And all that stuff about the, the autonomic nervous system, and people previously thought that it was impossible to modulate that through your will.
Right.
But he's now just like proven that over and over again.
Right.
And it's kind of cool, because then he has this huge gravitas, which kind of, it's almost like he helps us all a little bit. You know what I mean? Because it's kind of like, I'm telling you, breathwork like changes your state of consciousness. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of like, prove it. It's like, oh, I can't. Wim Hof did something though. You know what I mean? It's kind of people.
The
listen
simplicity of the breathwork. I mean, I've done qigong and all these different, things where you go, oh, you got this special pranayama breath, and you got this special, when you get to the super duper hobgoblin level, we'll give you this other breath, and you go, hang on a minute, this guy just goes, and it works.
Fully in.
And let it go.
Let go.
But okay, so then the central piece really of his message is you're going into yourself. When you first get in the water, it takes away. It's a bit like that mountain climber, isn't it? He says he's free climbing and he's 3,000 feet in the air and he's got no ropes, and he says, I'm not thinking about the past and I'm not thinking about the future. I'm thinking about right now. Where I'm putting my hand. And that makes you alive.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
And there's a number of pursuits that will make us do that. But you see, I see a correlation between that and the crop circles.
Yeah.
I got a back issue, right, which I suffered an injury with martial arts, and I'm seeing an osteopath at the moment, and he's fantastic. This guy does a bit of acupuncture, has a little chat, gives me a little click. I go away and I think this guy's got the magic, right?
Amazing.
Yeah. So we chatted, and he said, "What do you do?" So I said, I run this podcast, and I live like you, like a parallel life. In the daytime, I estimate cars that have been in car accidents.
Oh, really?
For insurance,
Really?
for insurance companies.
Cool. Double life.
Double life, right?
Yeah.
And then I come
Great.
home and I talk to guys like yourself, and then we got this other life, right?
Love it. Yeah.
And there is something about integrating those two lives, isn't there? Based on what you were just saying, there is something about you get a conflict, but then you've got to find a way where one works with the other.
It's a huge part of my journey, actually, the integration of those two realms. It's very Jungian, actually.
It's the shadow self, isn't it? Like integrating that shadow.
How do we own all of ourselves, But, sorry, you were making a link there between Wim and crop circles, which is interesting.
So the issue of... I was saying about the osteopath, right? So I said I do this podcast. So episode 9 of my podcast is with a dear friend of mine called Norman Sharp, who I spent we spent a month together traveling in Brazil to go and see famous psychic healers. And he'd made a film we first met him back in 2010 when he made a film which had 4 films in it, one of which was the crop circles. Two of the films in it were about these healers that perform miracles. And we show footage in the podcast. It's mind-blowing stuff. Another guy does this stuff with materializing things, right, which more people would probably dismiss because magicians, tricksters do this sort of stuff, but that's another story. Anyway, this osteopath, I said to him, check out one of my podcasts. So I went there this morning, 7 o'clock, to have my treatment. He said, I went to London the other day, and on the train, on the way down, I watched your conversation with Andy Thomas about AI and crop circles. He said, very interesting. He said, and on the way back, I watched the one with these psychic surgeons. Now, these guys, Geoff, right, this guy cuts people open with an angle grinder while they've got no anaesthetic, right, open heart surgery, literally, right, with an angle grinder, in front of loads of people, doctors standing there with their masks on, no anaesthetic, no gloves on, no hygiene. They don't die. He used to do 200 of these operations a day for 20 years. Right? Really? And you can see the video, right? It's got video footage of him cutting people open. It's not for everybody, right? It's not for the squeamish, this stuff. He said, I was trying to watch it because he said, the guy sitting next to me on the train, he said, I didn't want him to see. He probably thought I was watching the Texas Chainsaw Massacre live,
I've never heard of this. Wow, fascinating. Yeah,
check out episode 9 of my show. You'll see it. So we got talking about miracles, right? And we got talking about this side of ourselves, this infinite part of what is consciousness. So there's the link, right? We got Wim Hof, we got crop circles, some of which of them are miracles. Some of them, we accept, people go out and make them and copy. Everybody does. But I know from the 1,000-odd crop circles that I visited, and other people like Michael and Karen and other people that I've been around them for years, we know that there's something that's talking about consciousness with geometry and all these other things that's miraculous. And you go on that kind of archetypal hero's journey when you embrace it, because you get all the ridicule and the attacks, and you kind of got to fend that off and look at yourself, am I crazy, and all of that, right? And I see a correlation between that, jumping in ice, which most people would say is crazy, going and visiting healers that cut people open with angle grinders, and then coming back and saying to people, have you seen this?
I know. Right? Yeah.
Do you get me?
Yeah, I do. It's like, what is it that drives us to somebody like Wim Hof, or to seek out holotropic breath work, in your early 30s, which is an obscure kind of like technique developed by some psychiatrist, 50 years ago, and then what is it that draws you to go and visit these geometric formations in the fields of Wiltshire? And there's over the years, it's my take on that is there's something moving in all of us, which is, holotropic means moving towards wholeness,
Exactly
and
that.
I know for certain that the part of Geoff that kind of sought out holotropic breathwork is the exact same part that sought out getting to my first crop circle experience in 2012. It's this kind of like inner movement, you know, that it goes against the flow of our cultural conditioning and, you know, oftentimes the values of our peer group. And there's a courage or a bravery of some sort that makes you have to step out of that comfort zone. You know, like I have a funny story, as for some reason I wanted to say this. My wife's incredibly supportive, right? She loves everything I do. She's not necessarily interested in what I do, but she's really supportive. And we've been together practically all our lives. I'm really lucky, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, she's kind of says, look, honey, you just go do your thing. And then when you come back, just don't bore me to death with it. You know, you can do whatever you want. You know what I mean?
That's,
so
that's fantastic.
We have a great deal. And she's been amazing, I have to say. So, and because I do go very far out there and some of the stuff is quite wacky and I do feel for her a little bit, you know. It's like sometimes going to the dinner party, I'm like, you know, and she'd be like, I don't want to tell you what to say, but, you know.
Just tame it back a bit, you know.
Maybe not everyone, like I'd say aliens and crop circles, like just maybe if someone brings them up before you do, then maybe go, you know what I mean? So I was like, okay, got it, honey. So,
that's amazing.
This was funny. And I'm kind of proud of myself in a way. So like I love geometry, right? So geometry is just a massive part of my life, always has been. I see everything as geometry, by the way, right? Yeah. The entire, like, you know, cosmic consciousness is like one big geometry machine for me, you know?
It is.
And so for 10 years before I visited crop circles, I was like interested in mandalas and Jungian psychology. I was interested in like the architecture of the great cathedrals. I was interested in geometry in tiles and nature and the planets and the solar system. And I just adore it. I still do. Flowers, you know, like I just adore it. It's my thing, right? And so the crop circle thing just came to me. I remember when I was like 8 or 9, I was like, oh, remember those like circles? They were kind of geometric in the fields in Wiltshire. I wonder, are they still a thing? This was in 2010, right? Okay. And then I just went crop circles into Google and I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? So I just came through this kind of geometry channel and I was only looking for geometry. I didn't really mind who made them, how they were made, or all of that hadn't even surfaced in my head. I was just like, the pure geometry of these things alone was enough for me. My cup was full. I was like, oh, I have never in all my life seen such heavenly glory of these pristine, sublime geometries, you know? And I saw like White Sheet Hill, 2010.
Oh, okay, fantastic formation. I remember it very well.
Do you remember, I think it's called Savernake Forest. Do you remember those ones? Like just, I mean, masterpieces, you know?
Big year.
My jaw was just on the floor and I was drawing them and I was just like, and there's all so many numbers and stuff were dripping through me with all those. I was just like, what is going on? So it took me about 2 years to go, I'm going to go check these things out. I don't know. And to me, it just felt like normal. It was kind of like, you know, I might have gone to maybe Shart Cathedral if there was a workshop on there. I would go and I would check that out. Or if there's a sacred geometry school in Forest Row and they do workshops on mandalas of the world, I would go and do that. So it's not like that wacky, really. You know, like a geometry course in a geometry school, like no big deal. People do that all the time. Yeah. Visit Shart Cathedral, no big deal. People will be like, you could say that at the dinner party, right?
I did a weekend's course in Oxford University with Keith Critchlow.
God, yeah, like beautiful. I would be, he is like, I mean, he's an enlightened being, you know, in my opinion. But then anyway, so, you know, my wife was kind of like, all right, you go do your thing, you know. And so I booked my tickets for crop circles. And in 2012, that was my first year, right? It was a whole big deal. There was kind of a razzmatazz around it. There was like 400 people. Graham Hancock was the headline speaker. There was like tour buses, you know. It was so different. It's very much like ebbed away from that. But this was only like 12 years ago. Yeah. And it was kind of in its heyday peak, I think, you know. Yeah. And so I just went over, happy as Larry, flew to Bristol, rented my car, booked a hotel room, kind of just thinking it was just normal, like, you know. And my wife calls me that day, you know, and she's like, by the way, like, where are you? You know, and I was sitting in the car and I said, oh, I'm in a place called Devizes. It's in Wiltshire. Looks like a lovely town, hon, actually. You know, I think you might like it here. And she's like, what are you doing? Like, what is this? Like, and I said, well, it's a crop circle conference, you know. And she said, crop circles, but is that like aliens? Is this the next thing? Like, we have to do it? And I'm like, it's, and I was just, this is the sincerity of Jeff. I was like, well, like, it's not so much aliens. I mean, different people probably get different things from it. I'm really here for the geometry. And then she goes, and like, do you know anybody there? And I was like, no. I mean, the conference is tomorrow, so I just bought a ticket on my own. And I was like, and then I started saying things like, but like, you know, there might be people who like geometry too, so I might meet some people, maybe I could make some friends. And I was just like, then I started doubting myself. I was like, what am I doing? And she's like, so you're going to this thing about crop circles, you're going out into these fields with people you don't know, in the middle of nowhere, you know, are you sure you think this is wise, honey? You know, and I was like, trust me, it's all good, you know. And then you see, when she bounced crop circles off her friends, they were like, he's what? I don't believe you. And like I do, you know, I did all sorts of different workshops, you know, holotropics, psychedelics, you know, like Jeff is always into weird stuff, but the crop circles had such a reaction to people just really, they're all fake, they're all made with lawnmowers, they're all blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I was kind of surprised at the reaction, actually. You know, that there was such a, crop circles. I was like, wow, I never expect, like, nobody is interested when I talk about mandalas. If I talk about the Sri Yantra, people just go, boring. Interest. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's like, I was like, why are crop circles so charged for people? You know, it was really interesting to me, you know. And by the way, that whole experience, I went into my first crop circles, we did night watches, I met amazing people and great friends and, you know, this community of like-hearted spirits, which I kind of expected, and dear friends to this day, you know, and meeting people like you over the years, we spoke at the same conference. And so it was like, it's just a funny, it's, you know, it's funny how you have to walk out, you have to follow the call of your soul, is the point I'm trying to make. You know what I mean? And even if it feels a little bit weird and you have your wife asking you, which are probably reasonable questions.
Very reasonable.
You're like, you know, if you deny that part of yourself, I think you're going to pay a very high price, you know? And the rewards that come when you trust yourself are like, they're endless. The rewards are, if you just follow where it is your soul is guiding you, you'll never be let down. I really believe that. You know, it's not all going to be a rose garden, and sometimes, you know,
often it isn't.
Wim Hof will humble you, and you'll have to row backwards a little bit. So I'm not saying it's all a bliss trip. It certainly hasn't been that case for me, you know. But yeah, that was my kind of awakening into the crop circle world, you know, and
Fantastic.
And even like today, it's still quite like off limits to a degree, or you know, my whole reality changed in that weekend. You know, like I really had a life-changing experience. You know, where I always knew geometry was the fabric of reality, like the kind of the baseline that's woven into the creative principle itself, you know, is geometric, you know, and I always felt that. And this trip to the circles was like this endorsement of that, you know. And then I kind of found it funny and disheartening a little bit that there was all this dualistic kind of black and white. I kind of understand that better now. I understand why that's there, because geometry is this journey through these archetypes. And the 0 point is obviously like that center point, and then you've got like 1, and then you've got 2. So you have to go through this black and white. They're all man-made. They're all made by aliens. Oh, fuck you. You know, all this silly schoolyard fighting that happens. And then you find your frequency in it, you know. And for me, it's geometry, really. You know, it's like I love the work of John Martineau. I love the work of Keith Critchlow. There's an amazing, that Forest Row place, there's a guy called Daniel Docherty who's kind of like studied with, you know, John Martineau and Keith Critchlow, and he's an amazing teacher. Amazing.
I think I've heard the name. I don't really know his work.
He's a really like off-grid guy, right?
Okay.
And he is, I mean, he's one of those enlightened beings, you know. And I really wanted to get him on our podcast, right? And I went over and he's spinning out like the pie in the sky of Mercury and the golden ratio of Venus. And he's just, I mean, the guy is tapped I honestly, like, he's awesome, right? And I said, hey, Daniel, you know, I'd love if you'd come on our podcast with me and Scott and we could talk. And he said, you know, just that whole Zoom, internet, screen thing, it's not for me, Geoff, you know. And he said something like, if you want to come over here and maybe we sit under a tree and we could have a cup of tea, and, you know, if you wanted to record it, maybe we could just have the cup of tea. You know, he's just so, he's so amazing. And he has all these apprehensions about algorithms and, you know, as I do, by the way.
As I do,
know?
yeah, I know.
And he's just like, you know, he's tapped into the earth. He cooks lovely cake in the workshops and makes amazing coffee, which I love as well.
Yeah.
And he's the real deal, like a true geometer, you know. So I kind of treat myself to kind of like 1 or 2 of those a year if I can with him, because there's only like 10 or 12 in the workshops, you know.
Right.
And you do a deep dive into a geometric archetype of. Normally I do the planets. I'm really into how Mercury spins pi and how Venus spins phi, you know, like it's really extraordinary. When you draw it and meditate and reflect it, you start feeling their presence, you know. But I mean, it's mind-blowing, like it's really miraculous. And it's real kind of red pill stuff. Once you see it, you can never unsee it. You know, it's like...
You really can't.
You can't unsee it.
I know, you can't. I go over the park and I see every flower I look at. I was talking, I can't remember, I spoke on a podcast recently. I talked about, it was with Karen, when I did the podcast with Karen recently. There's a flower in Hawaii called the white zapote that has 7.
Oh, I've heard of this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very rare.
Really rare.
Yeah.
But apart from that, you know, wherever you look, they're 5-fold.
Yeah. Well, you can get 5s and 4s and 3s. You know that Critchlow book, The Geometry of Flowers?
Oh, it's one of my favourites. How can anybody not read that and just be in awe? I mean, especially, oh my God, it's just so good.
It's so good. I mean, it's just like, and you know, Albert Hofmann in his later years, right? You know, he's the inventor of LSD, and he was a good companion of Stanislav Grof, who started his work with LSD psychotherapy, right? And they're kind of like they're old, wise wizards now, you know. I think Albert has passed on, and Stan he's definitely in his senior years, you know. But Albert spent like the last kind of decade of his life studying flowers. The colours of flowers particularly. I don't know whether he's into the geometry, but like he literally was in awe of how flowers, you know, become the colours they are, basically. You know, and like, because he was quite scientific, he was able to kind of really go deep into it. And I just think that's really lovely that like a pioneer of such a radical consciousness opening tool ended up with like the most natural, simple forms of flowers. Then I think of Keith Critchlow, like his magnum opus really is the flower book. Well, I think he...
Time Stands Still.
Time. That was much earlier in his career, though, wasn't it? Which is probably more majestic as a finding, but it was more like, you know, in his sort of his more mature kind of retirement or whatever, like what he's basically like spending his time doing was flowers. It's almost like flowers have it all. Like it's all there for those who have eyes to see it. Like, you know, like it's all there. In a simple daisy. You know what I mean? It's just mind blowing. Like,
I know.
You know, and like that same geometry that's in the daisy is being spun by Venus, like in the sky around us, in time and in space. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, you know, I said to Karen, you know, when I found out that, you know, when we're born, we have 5 teeth in each quarter of our mouth, which fall out and replaced by 8 teeth, and 5 and 8 are 13. And then if you get the pineapple, you know, and you count the thing, you count the fir cone, and then you look at Venus beating at 5 times it kisses us in 8 Earth years or 13 Venus years. You're like, how can you not be wowed by these 3 numbers that are all around us, that anybody can understand? You don't have to be a string theorist who argues with another string theorist about what form of reality we really live in. Everybody can get. John Martineau said, I spent a week with John Martineau in South Africa, right?
Did you? Wow. I love him. He's amazing.
Oh, I love him. I mean, it was. So when I first came to the crop circles, 97.
97.
Yeah,
wow,
97.
Great year as well.
Great year.
Yeah.
That was my birthing into the crop circles, and I had a teacher, you know, and he was a peyote shaman from the States. And so I'd been exploring psychedelics. I'd read Castaneda, and I'd been toying with the idea of excuse me. I've been toying with the idea of I wanted to experience. I read Castaneda, and when I got to the end of the book, I closed the book and went, I need to meet Don Juan.
Okay.
And a series of coincidences began immediately, right? Immediately, Geoff. As soon as I said that, when I closed the book, the phone rang. And I picked up the phone, and it was the bookshop that I'd bought the Castaneda book. And at the time of buying the Castaneda book, I'd ordered Michael Harmon's book, The Way of the Shaman.
Mm-hmm.
And they called to say, your book's in. And because I was so fired up and charged at having just read Castaneda, I was like, I'm coming immediately.
Wow.
So I went into town, and when I got there, you know, the guy said, "Oh, we can't find it," and oh, let me go and look. And there was all this delay. And when I turned around, there's this woman standing there wearing sort of new agey gear with feathers in her ears and all these crystals and all this stuff, right? And I was totally straight. I wasn't new agey in any way. So it was like, hello, you look a bit interesting. And she said, she just started talking to me, and she told me to go to this shop, right? And she said, you need to get some crystals and stuff for ground. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, fair enough. But there's something made me think there's a coincidence here. I need to listen to what she said. So I went to this shop, met this guy, went to a sweat lodge ceremony, had a massively powerful experience after that. And because of that experience, needed to speak to this guy to say, what the fuck just happened to me, right? Something serious. Have I gone mad? Because I just had this experience, you know, 2 nights after the sweat lodge that blew my mind. I found the guy, tracked him down. He was on a book tour. He was with one of his students. And when I found him, I spoke to his student, the lady, and she said, I said, where is he? And she said, he's at the crop circles. And I said, and I'd basically been awake for about 2 weeks after this experience. Right? I hardly slept. I was like catching naps here and there, but I was just like, I was all over the internet trying to find out what happened to me. Finds this guy. I said, I want to go to the crop circles. I tell him I'm interested, right? So he calls me and he says, I'm going out to the crop circles, you know. Do you want to go? And it turns out long story short, he's a peyote shaman, and he became my teacher for 10 years, from 1997 to 2007.
Wow.
This man was my teacher. He would come over from America, and we would spend the summers together in the crop circles. The reason I'm telling you all of that is because that first year, John's first book, John Martineau's first book, is not titled, it's called The Harmony of the Spheres.
Yes, yeah.
By Othniel
I have it there.
The little one with the brown cover.
Yeah, well, I get it just for fun.
Yeah,
It might actually be here, I think. Is it? This one. Othniel C. Haynes.
That's the one.
Yeah.
So he held that book up to me.
Yeah.
And he said, if you want to get into this is the road. You need
John
to go
did.
down. No, my teacher.
Oh, really?
Shaman.
Your teacher, really?
Yeah. Right.
But is this before you met John?
Way before.
Okay.
I met John the following year for the first time when he was just launching the Wooden Book Company.
Ah, okay.
So, but he said to me, this book here comes from a bigger book that he wrote as a thesis with Keith Critchlow in The Prince of Wales, blah, 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 blah. And he said, that book is world changing, right?
Yeah.
And he learnt it all. He said he learnt it all from crop circles, right? And I was like, "Yeah." And I knew nothing, Geoff. I knew nothing about geometry, right? The only thing I knew about geometry is how you measured, the area of your room to lay a carpet. So the notion that there was this cosmic connection between geometry and philosophy and cosmology was just so far out of miles away. So for you to have done geometry, like I said earlier, right, there's two ways of coming at things, isn't there? Right, you can play the instrument and then learn the notes, or you can learn the notes and go. You did it that way, Ran. You learned the geometry and got and knew what it was, and then came into the concert and went, well, of course, this is all this.
Exactly. Right? Yeah, I mean,
I came the other way.
I
had to learn all of this stuff, right? That was so mind-blowing.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah, and that's a brilliant distinction between we've both ended up in the same place, but we took very different paths, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
And that lady I met on that first day, right, she said to me, she said, so what book are you getting? I said, I've been reading all this Native American stuff lately. I said, I don't really know much about that. I've done a lot of Chinese martial arts in my life. And she said, oh, that's the red route. And she said, now you're learning the yellow route. They all lead to the same place.
They all lead to the same place. Totally. That's it. Yeah. Like, what is it? Like many paths, one summit or something like that,
Right.
That's fascinating. So tell me about meeting John then in South Africa. Was that at a conference or something?
Yeah. So I wasn't speaking at the conference. I was there to film it. I was hired by Hugh Newman to film the speakers.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
So we were in Cape Town for the first several days, and then we flew up to Joburg. And John was speaking in Joburg, and he actually forgot. Right, and so he never turned up. He missed his flight, and then we phoned him up and said, "John, where are you?" And he went, "Oh, is it now?" And he got on a plane and flew. So typical John. And I like we'd had interactions. In 1998, we had this interaction about the wooden books and that he was going to launch these things, and he was and I didn't really get to grips with him. And then I watched him talk a few times and threw a few questions at him over the years, and at festivals he'd speak at the Green Gathering and stuff like that, but I didn't really get to. And then obviously I worked with Michael and John were close, and so he knew who I was and I knew more about, I think, who he was, but we never really got that time together.
Sure.
So he turns up in South Africa. And we end up the first night at the bar, right? And he says, "Do you want a scotch?" And I said, "I don't really drink." And he went, "Single malt, it's good for you." And I went, "Go on then." so he pours me a Glenfiddich, right? And he gets one, and we're sipping this Glenfiddich, and we start chatting, right? And so, how'd you get into the cocktail? Oh, this 4 a.m. Next night, 4 a.m. Next night, 4 a.m. For a week, we drunk this whole. But the last night, the barman just went to bed. They left us. We drank this whole. I never drunk so much scotch in my life. We didn't feel drunk either. We were just like, it just enhanced the conversation. What a genius that man is.
I hear, Jean Michell was quite a he liked, I think, a drink as well, and I think...
he liked to smoke as well.
Yeah, and he liked to smoke, and a lot of his best ideas, whatever way that might have opened a channel for him, I think a lot of the truth poured... I mean, he's another legend beyond compare,
Met him once, yeah.
So yeah, it's funny, isn't it? It's like I was a kind of a standard issue drinker around town in my 20s, But when I started Holotropic, it's just like I could no longer drink. It just fell away. It was like, it wasn't even I'm not going to drink because I'm now a meditator. It was just like, I think I'd prefer not to put alcohol into my energy field. And you know what? If I wanted a pint or a whiskey now, I'd probably have one. But my access is easier without alcohol, I have to say. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And meat fell away as well. I just stopped eating meat, and but I'm reviewing that, to be honest, because actually I have a teenage daughter who has an iron deficiency, and so the doctor was saying we really need to eat a lot more red meat. So I barbecue a lot, and I've been barbecuing like the highest grade lamb and steak, and I'm smelling it, and it is like delicious, and I'm like, why am I not eating this again? Like, where did I? So I think I'm going to return to meat actually, because I'm following that inner healer again. It's not like maybe something was right for a time, but then I'm also good at changing my mind as well. Do you know what I mean? So
I think that's a sign of that. To me, that's real spiritual practice. You need to recognize when you're wrong about something and go, I was wrong about that, or maybe that was right for then and it's not right for now, and I'm going to change.
Things have changed. Things have changed. Exactly.
Yeah.
And like it might be the same with alcohol sometime. You know what I mean? If you have these hard fixed stances, they tend to have a charge around them. Do you know what I mean? And whenever there's a charge, there's some unfinished business, or at least in my case, that's what I felt. Where when I'm free of something, it has left the building permanently. It doesn't come in. I'm not like, oh God, I'd love a beer, or oh, when I'm like, this steak it smells divine, you know what I mean? And I'm like good quality meat. I don't like the mass industrialization of the meat industry. I think that's what turned me off. But actually, I still very much dislike that. But I think a friend of mine went to Argentina, and like he was like he went to a farm where they and it was literally like the cows were there in the field. You'd see them, and they were well cared for, and they had good lives. And then like the barbecue was there, and the family table was there. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like that is the type of meat eating I could really enjoy. You know what I mean? So
there is a revolution happening actually with, and it's funny because at the same time as we're realizing this, that we only need to eat a handful.
Yeah,
protein.
Yeah.
It's only that much, right? But stuff that's been discovered with grass-fed, really well-reared meat now is so good for us, Geoff. It's so our body needs the nutrients that come from it.
That intuitively feels right for me. I have to say, yeah.
And you don't, like I do it once every couple of weeks with red meat.
Yeah,
now.
Good quality.
Really good quality. There's a local butcher's called Rare Butchers here in Bristol
Lovely.
They've got a local farm here in Somerset.
Lovely.
They rear. It's all well cared for animals. So mostly it's chicken and fish. A lot of oily fish.
I
love sardines, and I love So I do that 2 or 3 times a week. Salmon, at the really good canned wild Pacific salmon.
Wow.
Lot of greens, leafy vegetables, and beans. Chickpeas and mixed beans and stuff like that. But
Pythagoras would be proud of you. I used to be a big bean eater.
Yeah.
So I hear. I don't know. I mean, it's just
is it true?
A mad bit of a fable, But
is that right?
Don't know.
I didn't. I never heard that.
I read a lot about Pythagoras. I'm a huge fan of. I wanted. You know what? I wonder, could we steer the conversation into one formation that you did a lot of work on, which I remember you giving a talk on. And I think it's highly controversial. So, like, I don't want to turn this into a debate. But I mean, it was the Etsy formation. You know that famous Etsy formation? Ansty, is it? Ansty, yeah. And obviously there's a whole debacle, around it, And I really do not want to talk about who made it, is a man-made or not. I'm not talking about that at all. It was just, one, it was such a beautiful work of art, 2, it was linked with that bong manufacturer. I don't know
Mothership bongs.
Mothership bongs. Was that what it was? Yeah. And so it was clearly their logo, which would make you intuit that it was a commissioned piece, I guess, But I mean, it was still pristine, and the detail was off the charts, All of the leaf work and everything was so impressive, And I was like, and then you have all of the people fighting, which I dislike. I tend to shy away from that because I really don't care about it, I'm more like, I like to look at it. I didn't draw that one because it was actually way too difficult to draw at least for me, from a geometric point of view, all of the script, But it was just, I feel what happened there was everybody ruled that one off. I'll forget about it. It's obviously a scam. It's to do with a commercial logo. But then you gave a very fresh talk, I think at Karen's, which was actually you invited people to consider maybe it's not as like straightforward as how everybody is reacting. And I remember I was really impressed by your talk, because I was very much in the camp of, oh, it's obviously just, a commissioned piece, pretty
Sure.
epic and amazing. But your talk was fascinating, do you know? And it was like, I wonder, like, how do you feel about that formation now? Like, knowing what you know now, has your mind changed, or where do you stand with that one?
So it's one of the formations. It's an interesting one in my journey, because I came to the conclusion years before that when anybody, because I got fed up with people going, and a new crop circle would appear, or 5 in one day, right? And then all you'd hear from people is this one genuine? Is this one genuine?
Yeah.
And then you'd have a little argument about it, and then they'd throw that over their shoulder like kids who'd rip the
I know.
wrappers off. Right, the next one. Right, is this one genuine? Is this one genuine? Is this one genuine? And you think, God, if these are miraculous, which I think some of them are, then we're not treating these the right way, right? We Karen's approach of let's just sit back and have a little think about it. It's got to be the better approach. With this one, and so I made a decision, right? If people say to me, "Is this one genuine? Is this one genuine?" Right? I go, okay, look, let me just put this to you, right? It's not just about one individual formation. If we narrow it down to one individual formation, and we say, "Is this one genuine? Is this one genuine?" Not on it, then often people will write off the rest of them based on what that one is, whether or not it's real or not, or man-made or not, right? Throw the baby out with the bathwater. So I say, okay, imagine now if I lay out 7,000 photographs on the table, and we go through each one, and we can talk about the circumstances under which they appeared, and the precision of the geometry, and the condition of the lay, and the scientific evidence that was found at the site, and the soil analysis, and the this, that, and the others, right? And all those things. And we go, right, three boxes: man-made, don't know, genuine, mysterious, right? And we decide which box we're going to put them in. And we go through each one of them, 7,000 of them, and we put that one over there, and then one's in the middle, and those ones over there, right? And at the end of the exercise, we want to talk about the ones over there, the ones that are in the genuinely mysterious box, right? We forget about the man-made ones because we've already decided. Forget about the ones that we don't know because, right, we can come back to them.
Yeah.
But these ones over here that we've put in this box, let's talk about them. Because we've got witnesses maybe that sat up all night and they appeared in such a short time frame that if somebody tried to make them, like myself and 777, I challenge anybody to make that formation of 1,000 circles in the dark in front of 3 people whilst they're filming in under 300 minutes. Go do it. Go do it. Show me. So I made my choice that was how I was going to approach it when people ask about an individual formation. Then Ansty comes along. And I go there and I interview the farmer, right? And I worked for Jaime Maussan in Mexico. So I was a correspondent. I would go on the show and I'd give reports and, and do all this sort of stuff, prepare stuff. So
can I just ask about that person? Is that the kind of famous Mexican person who was very vocal and was at the Mayan headdress formation and did a documentary on it? That guy, is it?
Yep.
What's his name?
His name's Jaime Maussan.
Okay, I don't know him so much, but I know the guy you're talking of. Yeah.
So if you look up the whole controversy about the Nazca mummies at the moment, he's at the centre of all that.
Ah, okay.
So I worked for him as a correspondent from 2007 we met, and he hired me. He said he wanted to work with me then, and sort of from 2008 I began doing reports and going on the show, and then I lived in Mexico from 2020, and I went out there several times over the years, and spoke at the World Trade Center conference that he organised and stuff like that, right? So he's a controversial figure. Lots of people disagree with him, and there are good reasons for that. The person I told you about earlier that exploited me with the documentary is him, right? Yeah,
I know. And you know what? I think you have to add all that to the picture of a person as well. You know what I mean? Like,
nobody's perfect.
Those things do add up, in my opinion. You know what I mean?
Do.
If someone treats somebody like that, then it's kind of it does reflect a bit on their character.
Sadly, it does.
Yeah.
Sadly, it does.
Yeah.
But you see, I think it takes a little bit more. Oh, what's the word? discernment to say, okay, I'm not gonna ad hominem him with some of the stuff like the Nazca mummies, right? Because people go, oh, these Nazca mummies, they must be fake because Jaime's done this stuff fake in the past, right? Or he's presented this as, hang on a minute, let's look at the evidence about the mummies rather than the person, right? Because
fair point.
We have to do that. So my issues with Jaime, are my issues with Jaime about his character, and nobody's perfect, right? He's and it goes back to what you said, right? The guy decided, as a journalist, he decided to go down the UFO route in 1990. He was the anchor man for 60 minutes on the biggest TV station in America, in Mexico, broadcasting to 130 million people, right?
God, that's huge.
It's huge, right? So for a guy like that, who everybody knows is like, the Walter Cronkite of Mexico, right? Who was talking about El Nino and the cartel. He investigated. The cartels got to him and said, "One more word about us, and you're dead."
Wow,
he was fearless.
Really?
This guy, yeah.
Wow.
The warning came down from above and said, like, that's enough.
Yeah.
Right. So this, you've got to give him the respect for that, right? He was a young journalist who was like, in 1990 they had an eclipse in Mexico. And when it went dark, there was a ball of light hanging over the city. And people had video cameras in 1990, the big ones with the big cassettes, right? And they filmed it from different locations. And everybody knew Jaime Maussan was the man who ran the biggest news station, 60 Minutes. So they sent him the videos. What the hell is this, Jaime? Yeah. And he put it on a show, right? Fabulous. And then people started sending him videos from all over the world. Okay. And so he became the journalist of UFOs, right? So then he made it a business, right? And this goes back to what you said at the beginning, right? Once it becomes a business, you got to worry about, I've got to pay the staff, right? My running costs of the studio are £100,000 a month now, right? Because I've got all this staff and I've got blah, 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 blah. And so then you have to become, in my view, less discerning about the content and more about, I need to put this on, I need content for the show, right? So when I lived out there, every Sunday, it was a 2-hour special on a Sunday. We'd do the regular news at night, the world news about COVID and all what was going on, right? And then on a Sunday night, it would be UFOs, ghosts, crop circles.
When was this? How long ago was this?
I lived there from January 2020 until August 21. 18
so this
months.
Is quite recent.
Yeah. But
wow.
I worked for him from 2008, as a correspondent.
Wow. Okay.
During the summer, I'd go and visit crop circles and I'd film, hola, my nombre es Gary King, esto somos reported, de los crop circles de Inglaterra. I'd talk to the camera and I'd
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool. Yeah. Oh, and that would go out in Mexico on big fame, like 130 million people. Wow, Gary King.
I'm fairly famous in Mexico.
Really? That's that's fabulous.
And in Brazil as well, in South America. I'm more famous in South America than I am in England.
That's
it's weird.
Cool. Oh, I didn't know that. I love that. That's a good bonus round, Gary. Got to check that stuff out.
So not as famous as Jaime though, because everybody knows Jaime. We used to drive down the street. We lived in the mountains above Mexico City in the national park, right? And so that's awesome. I'm going to get back to Ansty. This is all coming around to Ansty. Sure. So because I worked for him, I went along and interviewed Karen, the farmer at Ansty, right? Initially, I had a young lad who I was teaching about crop circles, and when it happened, I was tied up. So I called him and I said, "There's an awesome crop circle. I need you to get down there now and just suss it out for me, right?"
Yeah.
So he went down. He spoke to a farmer that had cows that because it was like there was a hill that sort of sloped down to this field where the Ansty formation was. And he spoke to the farmer who'd been out moving his fence for the cows to graze, right? And he said the day before, and he said there was nothing there then, the day before, right?
Okay.
Subsequently, that farmer refused to talk to us when we went back to re-interview him, right?
Interesting.
Yeah. But I spoke to Karen, the farmer. I got there, and I said, will you talk to me, blah, 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 blah. My boss is coming over from Mexico on Saturday. We'd love to do an interview with you for Mexican TV and so on and so forth. And she agreed, okay? I should have got her on camera there and then. I had my camera with me, but I didn't. I was in the formation, and I had a researcher from the States with me called Erica Lukes, who'd flown out from Utah, and so I was kind of like double edging it. I was with her, sort of guiding her to her first crop circle, and I was also looking at it for myself, taking pictures of the lay and talking to people and talking to her. And I'd arranged the interview, and she said, "Yeah, okay." For the rest of the week, she got absolutely besieged, as did all of her staff, right? This is what happens. Yeah. Everybody turning up and no one paying any respect for the fact that she's running a business and a farm shop and that she's got young girls who are vulnerable there, and they were just barging in with camcorders in their face. What are you going to make about the crop circle, right? So by the time we got there, right, with Jaime on the Saturday, she said, "No, I'm not doing the interviews. I'm not doing them." And she absolutely
her patience
refused.
was gone.
And I don't blame her.
Understandably, okay.
Yeah. I actually fell out with Linda Moulton Howe. You know Linda Moulton Howe?
Well, do you know, I actually don't, but I know she's quite famous.
She used to.
I haven't got to her work yet. I have to be honest.
It's never been my cup of tea. All of her work, really. It's like kind of far out there alien stuff, and I mean, I have an interest in the alien stuff.
Sure.
Obviously, I have to. I'm in this arena, but I like the crop circles because they're real, and you can go in them and you can measure them. Fuzzy lights in the sky. I used to argue with Jaime when the show come on a Sunday. Go, come and look at this. What do you think of that? And I go, it's a fuzzy light in the sky. And he used to go crazy at me, right? So she refused. She said, I'm not doing it. So, and Linda Moulton Howe got me on the phone. And I knew Linda. We spoke together at a conference in Rio, and she knew me, right? So she calls me up and she says, "I've just been on the phone to that farmer, Karen, and she hung up on me and this, that, and the other." And I said, "Oh, really?" And then when I sort of questioned her about, did you like ask permission if it was convenient to speak to her, or was you just a brash American, frankly? You just rung her up and just like, after she's had a week of being besieged and just expected her to drop everything and just talk to you. How does she know who you are? And Linda got quite offended by me speaking to her like that, right?
Okay.
I'm sad about that in some ways, but in other ways, sometimes American people don't understand British people. They might speak the same language, right, but they don't understand our culture as well as they think they do.
Sure.
Because they speak the same language, and they certainly don't understand farmers' mentalities. And if you approach a farmer in that way, when we're trying to like get her on side so that she can actually open up, Linda didn't do us any kind of service.
Yeah.
And then Linda hired a private investigator who then claimed that this farmer, Karen, had hired people to make it, or got these people to make it, and that she'd bribed all of the people in Ansty village not to say anything, or blackmailed them all not to say anything, and all this kind of stuff that this private investigator came out with.
Very unlikely farmers in the English countryside. I mean,
She's a young, I suppose in her late 30s, this woman. There's no way she could blackmail a load of people and say, you mustn't tell anybody.
I mean, maybe if there was a commission piece and the farmer wanted to do it, like I could understand somebody doing that, no problem. But running around the neighbours trying to pay them to keep, it's not very likely, in my opinion. Not very likely.
And this place was a pick your own fruit farm, right? So there were people there from early in the morning till late at night picking strawberries and blackberries, right next to the field.
Sounds lovely, by the way. Yeah.
It's nice. Yeah, it's very lovely. Right? A farm shop and a cafe, and she bakes all these cakes and lovely cakes, and it's a lovely place, right? And I mean to go back actually and see her after all these years, right? Because there's obviously with the videos that were released.
Actually, that would probably be nice.
It would be.
Yeah.
So anyway, what happened was Jaime was virtually begging her. He said, "I've flown from Mexico and please." And she went, nope. She wouldn't do it.
Okay.
So we were disappointed, blah, 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 blah. Right. So then I had this argument with Linda Moulton Howe, and I said, okay. And there were some other people, some proper characters, like names I won't mention, who'd gone in there and really pissed this Karen off, right? Sticking camera up her nose and, what's going on with this? So I wrote a paper. I wrote an essay and basically laid out in this essay that, how rude people had been. And that this woman had a duty of care to her young female members of staff, and that it was wrong for people to just be turning up and barging in and all this, that and the other, and it should have been approached in a different way, and so on and so forth. And she read it. And I went back to her and she said, "I trust you. I'm not going to give you a camera interview, but I'll sit down with you and I'll talk through everything. So I said, okay, great. So me and Lucy Pringle went back and we sat with her for the afternoon, and she showed us her holiday. She said, I was on holiday, right? She said, here's my phone. I'm going to show you my personal photographs of my children on the beach, right? These are the date stamps on it. This is She said, and she absolutely denied that she'd hired people. She said, we did used to hire people to make these little patterns in the field, right? It's been a regular thing that we've done to raise money for charity. She showed us pictures of the patterns they used to make, which are these kind of abstract squiggles and circles and things like that in this field, this particular field. And she said they'd be there for 6 weeks making this mess, basically, right? Nothing like the picture of Ansty. And I have incredible internal shots from the first day, which undamaged crop, right? She said, we got back from our holiday late, put the children to bed. I woke up in the morning, opened the curtains, and there it was. That's her story to me and Lucy Pringle. Okay. So I then wrote a paper, another essay against the Grain WordPress blog I was writing at the time, and detailed the interview. You can read it. Okay. And in that, I said, I never put my head on the chopping block and say, I stand by this one formation. I've always gone for the 7,000.
Yeah.
Right? But with this one, I'm going to say it's genuine. Right?
Okay.
Put your reputation on the line kind of deal, right? If you want to take it that way, then I did, right?
Yeah.
So then a couple of years later, Matthew Williams and Denny Hine and these characters released this video which shows the drone taking off, and it's definitely a drone that's at that farm, because you can see the house and you can see the land, and it appears to show people making the crop circle, right?
Yeah.
That throws a spanner in the works, doesn't it? So you go, okay, well, why did they take 2 years to release it? Why is it edited in the way that it's edited? Is it possible that could be faked? Because if there's any evidence or if there's any videos which like showed the orbs making that crop circle in 1996, it's Matthew Williams and all these people that jump all over it and say it's been faked at a local animation studio, even though we proved that it couldn't be at the time, and so on and so forth.
That's a fascinating story, that one. There's so many
Fascinating.
fables in the
So many.
in the scene. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I there's a bit of me loves it, I have to say. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's all part of the drama.
Yeah.
And so I always say that, you know, like, because these guys, you know, these characters, there's only a handful of them, less than a handful really. Now they all claim that they get visited by supernatural powers so that they can work at the speed of light to make these crop circles in the dark, and they get special night vision, or clouds come over and cover them so that people on the hill can't see them, and all these, and they get inspiration from possession of something to make all the crop circles and all that, right? They get all the magical powers, right? And they get all this stuff, but it runs through their bodies so that they can make them with boards and rope, okay? If anybody like myself comes up and says, well, I had a weird experience, there was a ball of light that did it, or a flash of light that did it, then they attack you. It can't happen to you that way. It can only happen to us.
It's funny, yeah.
you know
what? I do quite like the idea of, you know, humans channeling higher intelligences. You know, and I'm not closed off to that. Do you know there was a great snippet? Do you know there was an interview one time? I'd love to get this. It's on YouTube somewhere with Doug and Dave. Now, did one of Doug and Dave passed away?
They're both dead now, but I think,
They're both dead, are they? Okay, well, I think it was the taller guy was on and it could have been like John Craven's News Round or something like that.
I've probably got those clips.
Really? And,
yeah.
And it was basically like Team Satan were there with all their boards behind, and it was like Doug and Dave, and it was kind of a... Look, I'm sure Team Satan have made many wonderful formations. I'm not saying they didn't. You know, it's not what I found interesting was Doug was speaking, right? And he goes, he said, yeah, well, like, we made formations, definitely, you know, but they didn't make all the formations. They couldn't. It's just not a possibility. But in that interview, this is the bit that really struck my heart. He said, you know, the thing is like, I don't know what it was that made me walk into those fields in the first place and choose to start spinning circles, you know?
Well, I see that contradicts another earlier interview he did that I got on camera.
Yeah.
So I've put together a documentary which I'm not happy with, and
Okay.
it's got clips of him on the news
Okay.
articles, right? And he says that when he was in Australia, he lived in Australia, that there were these reports of UFOs landing and creating these circles in grass and one thing and another. And he came back to England, and he was a watercolour artist, and he used to go and have a pint of beer and a chat with his mate Doug Bauer. This was Doug talking about his friend Dave. He said, me and Dave, we'd go for a pint of beer and have a chat about art and watercolours. And on our way home, we thought, why don't we do this? Right. So he might be saying he doesn't know what inspired him at that moment to say, why don't we do this? But in the interview, he says, we did it for devilment. We did it to fool the people.
Oh, they did definitely, yeah. And there's a book called Round in Circles. Great book, actually. I forget the name of the guy who wrote it. And yes, you're absolutely right. He says that. But this was just a moment. It was almost just like, it was kind of like an innocent comment, but it felt very truthful, you know. And it was like, it just made me feel, and I felt like the Team Satan were kind of like, what's he saying? You know, this is not what we signed up for. You know, we want to be on TV for saying he's channeling some higher intelligence, you know. But then they all say that now. They, you know, well, not all of them, but sorry, I shouldn't say that. They don't all say it, but certainly Matthew Williams has said it, and certainly some of the others. I can't remember exactly who, but other members of that crop circle making. And like, it would be nice if there was a more cordial dialogue that was possible. You know, it's sad that like there's so much kind of like animosity, because like and I do believe people do make them, like not all of them, by the way. It's a total mystery to me. But like, wouldn't it be nice if we could have a cordial chat about like, hey, what's it like for you guys, and what happens, and you know, it's be interesting do you feel you're channeling something, or what's coming through you? And
there have been those there are, you know, particularly like Roland Bejon and people in the Dutch researchers, you know, they've spoken to these guys. There's plenty of people who've spoken to them, and but they don't want to answer some of the questions which are awkward. I get you. So for example, you know, like the recent one at Wilton Windmill.
The stick man. Yeah.
So Karen's just drawn it, hasn't she? And she's found some great geometry in it, and
we discussed it. It's a beauty, by the way.
Beauty.
There's so many cool things about that one. Yeah.
Now I went to that 2 or 3 weeks ago, whenever it was. It hadn't long appeared, and I had an American couple with me.
You were here. You went in this year, just recently. Cool.
Yeah. I maybe visit one a year these days. You know, I don't need to go to them anymore. But you know, sometimes I do. So I went to this one, and again, I should have took some photos. I've got photos of other formations where there's a conundrum in these formations which they've never been able to answer. There's a number of things they can't answer satisfactorily, and I only want. If they say they make all of them, or they're all man-made, then I don't want extraordinary evidence. I want ordinary evidence. Just prove it. Just prove it, right? Just show us. It's very simple. But they've never done that. They stamp out stuff, and when we go inside them, the crops are broken. And this is the thing. When I got to this formation in Wilton Windmill, you can clearly see, it was several days old, and you can clearly see where people have walked, because where they've walked, there's this narrow path that sort of wiggles a bit of dead crop. It's all brown. And all the crop to the right and left of it, and all the way around these circles, it's all alive and coming back. Okay.
It's really high crop, weirdly, as well, isn't it? Is it a really tall field of crop?
There's different. Yeah, there's different. It's barley, which I love. I love barley. It's just got that wispy. It's green barley, you know, so it's not mature.
But is it nearly like shoulder height, or am I wrong on that? No, it's like it's knee height, or like up to your thighs, below your waist. There's different breeds there where they've hybridized the crops now to make them either shorter, or there's some of them grow higher. I would say it's probably just above my waist. I'm about 5'8", so it's just above my waist. I get you. So high enough, but not super high. Yeah.
But the point is that if people just walking on the crop in to visit the crop circle within a couple of days has killed it, and it's all brown where they've walked, why is the stuff that was stamped down with boards alive and not damaged?
Fair point.
Wouldn't that be going brown as well if it was stamped with several people in there working away at making it?
Yeah. Totally.
If footsteps do it and kill it, why didn't the boards, right?
And you know what? It's kind of it's so uninteresting in comparison to what the beauty of that formation is. Because I was talking to Karen and a couple of friends about it, and one of the geometry guys that I'm really good friends with, Peter Vandenberg, you know him?
He's coming on the show shortly.
Is he? Yeah, he's wonderful. Yeah. And he noticed that, like, you know, the tumulus, I think it's called, the little earth circle.
That's at Stonehenge, yeah, the same area.
Yeah, as the flattened crop. Isn't that mad? You know, and then there's these, like, then you see, doesn't your consciousness change just with that fact compared to who's saying they're man-made or whatever? Or do you know the one from another one I absolutely adore is like 2010 Milk Hill, you know, and it's Milk Hill, White Sheet Hill 2010. It's all these different circles, you know.
So there's a video on my website, on my YouTube channel, of me visiting that.
Were you in that one?
Oh yeah, many times. Can
I share some of the numbers in that one? That blew me away, right? So like it's made up of 3 different size circles, right? Like it's kind of like there's tiny little circles, medium circles, and big circles, right? Essentially. And so there's 7 big circles, okay? There's 30 medium circles, and then around those medium circles there's 4 little circles. So there's 168 small circles, right? And those small circles are divided. They have a tiny tuft in half of those 168, right? So, and I was looking at this and I was drawing it, and this one, like, I just fell in love with, right? And then I was like, what I kind of do is sometimes simple multiplication of the numbers, you know, and if you multiply the 30 by the 168 by the 7, you get this 5040 number.
No.
Yeah, did you know that?
Really? I did not know that. Wow.
So what? Yeah, let me just do that to make sure I'm right about that, because I needed to lie down after this. Right? So 168 by the 30. Oh yeah, sorry, 168 by the 30 is 5040 is what it is.
168 by the 30. What do you mean by
the 30? So you just multiply the middle ones by the small ones, and you get 5040.
168 times 30.
Yeah, 168 times 30.
Equals 5040.
Yeah,
which for those listeners that don't know, that's the combined radius in English miles of the Earth and the Moon. Exactly. And it's a number that Plato talked about a lot.
Yeah,
and it's also what is it? 8 times 9 times 10 times 11.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. So, you know, when these things click, and I was like, oh my God. And then I was like, hang on, there's 7 days in a week. The average days in a month is 30. And the number of hours in a week is 168.
Yeah.
Right?
And I used to live, when I grew up, I lived at 168 Linden Gardens. It's just
really?
It's just a number that I grew up with, you know.
I was saying, oh my God, this is a clock. It's a glyph. It's a geometric glyph of time as we see it from planet Earth. Like, this is, you know, we've got 168 hours. We've got 7 days of the week, 30 days in a month, right? Like, I think that's can you say there's 30 days? The average number of days in a month is 30. Yeah. Or I learned that in school anyway, you know.
Yeah.
But then I was going, oh my God. And then when I went to 5040, then that was like a spatial reference to the Earth and our satellite.
Right.
So this geometry then is this snapshot of time and space, if you think about it, because it's also spatial because of the radius of the Earth and the Moon, you know? So it's like in that one formation, boom, you have this like glyph that's presenting time and space as we see it right here, right now. It's just phenomenal. And then I found it again in Ogbourne St. George. Do you know that one that showed up in the pandemic?
With the compass? Oh no, that was before.
No, it was a beautiful mandala one. And actually I really had an affinity with it because it was one of the few formations that had these very particular mandala petals, like you'd see in a traditional mandala.
Right.
And it was an 18-fold star. It's called Ogbourne St. George 2020, right?
Yeah, just outside Marlborough.
It's based on an 18-sided shape, right? And so And then I got 864 in this I worked out if you have an 18-sided polygon, right? The internal degrees in that is 160. And then I multiplied that by 8. I multiplied that by 18, and then there were 3 octaves of this 18-fold flower. When the central flower is pressed down.
Oh, I know the one you mean. Yes.
Yeah, do you know the one I'm talking
Yeah.
about? So if you multiply the degrees by the points by the number of octaves, so it was like, just want to see that I get this right because I know we're recording this, and I can always mess up my numbers, by the way. But, so it's 60, it's 160. Does that make sense? The inside degrees of the polygon. If you draw an 18-sided shape, so you just draw a shape between the points of the formation, and you get an 18-sided shape. Well, the number of degrees in the 18-sided shape is 160, right?
Right.
So then you multiply that by the 18 points, it gives you 2880, and then there's 3 octaves of it. Okay, so I don't have it drawn here, but if you draw that with geometry, the central circle is pressed down into formation, but the geometry of it has 3 layers of 18-pointed stars, basically. So you multiply 160 by 18 by 3, and you end up at 8640.
8640. That is. Why do I? 8640. So you're talking about the diameter. 8,640,000. That's the sun, isn't it?
The diameter of the sun is 864,000.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
So like these numbers, like, you know, they're there. Like they're not, like, I'm not making these up.
No.
You know what I mean? It's like right there for anyone to see. You know what I mean? It's like.
And so, Jeff, right. So from people that are watching this, I'm going to bring the picture up of the crop circles. It's always good to give it when I do the edit, but. So
I might give you the picture of the drawing where I have the little numbers.
Oh yeah, that would be great. Send that to me.
I kind of just scribble it down, kind of freehand, but you can see how I do it. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. That's 168, and you know, and I'll show you. So maybe if you are going to put that in, I can.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah,
that'd be great. I mean, I'll digress to a story about John Michell in a moment, right?
Okay.
Where he discovered something, because when you're just sitting there going, I wonder if that works, and it's like remember the rabbit formation that everybody said was fake, right? I discovered a vesica from the angle of the ear. I drew a huge circle from the angle of the ear, right? Yeah. And then another one, and it was the vesica, perfect vesica of this rabbit. The inner part of the ear and the outer part of the ear make a vesica. Yeah, right?
Fabulous.
And I rang Michael. I said, Michael, I've pulled a vesica out of this, and the circles are so huge that no one could have got those angles right, and just this little rabbit's ear, right? It's just amazing. Oh God, what was I going to say? I've forgotten what I was going to say now.
You were just saying when I'm doodling away and I'm messing with these numbers.
You know, when these things jump out at you, you know, they're you're just doodling away, and all of a sudden you go, oh, I've got something, right? Remind me to tell you the story about John Michell before I forget this. Okay, sure. But for those people that are listening, when we talk about these numbers, right, and you go, oh, you know, like I remember doing this to people years ago, and I go, you know, and so this number and it lines up with this, and they go, so what? Yeah. So what? Right? Yeah. And you go, well, it's cosmic, and they go, oh yeah, it's cosmic, right? How do you bring it back to right? And you go, right, you know, what's out there is inside of us. Yes. And number doesn't really exist, right? It's we've got symbols to represent these numbers, but really they're archetypal, they're primal for the creation of everything, including us. And so the fact that we've got a mind to be able to recognize the beauty of that, it puts us in it, and it puts it in us. Yes. Okay. Yes. And so exactly right. And so when you said earlier about wholeness, right? My teacher said, from the early days of my crop circle adventures, Gary, you were broken, and this journey's about making you whole again. Okay, it's been a long journey, and I'm not there yet. I'm still putting myself back together. And when you take psychedelic plants, one of the most important parts he taught me about a psychedelic experience is the coming on. Is the moment when your reality begins to shift because of the plant's effect. Okay, that's a crucial point of the journey, right? And 2 things normally happen to people. They either burst out laughing uncontrollably, or they cry their eyes out. And I said to him, why does that happen every time, you know, that moment occurs, that transition period? Why do people laugh or cry? He said, it's the gap getting filled to make them whole. It just fills with either laughter or tears. It shows there's a gap, right? It's not joined the circle back together.
I like that.
And so when you talk about the numbers that are out there in the sun and the numbers that are down there on the ground in the crop circle that reflect the numbers of the teeth in our, you know, when we're born, and the ratios of our body, and then the music ratios that emanate beauty to us.
Yeah.
That we are able to recognize beauty in visual things because of those proportions. We're able to recognize beauty in the music and the sound of things because of those proportions. We're able to recognize the beauty in the flowers because of those proportions.
Yeah.
But it's like Scott says, isn't it? That consciousness is the territory. And all
Yes.
of that is the map that points back to consciousness.
Yeah, like I'll explain a little bit like of like how I feel that, right? Because I kind of feel into these things. So say like the significance of a number 5040, why is that a big deal, right? And by the way, I've tried to share this with my friends, and most of them, their eyes just glaze over and they go boring, you know, I'm getting better. I've learned techniques
Me
about
too.
like if I
Yeah.
show people, you know, if you get a rose, if I'm at a dinner party and there's a rose, I said, did you know that the rose is 5-pointed? If you have a look at how it opens, take any rose and it's a 5-pointed kind of foundation when it opens as a bud, and people go, oh, that's kind of cool, you know what I mean? You can't talk about numbers to people. John Martineau told me this. He said, just show pictures. Say, here's a daisy, check out the 5-pointed star over it, you know? But this is very like sincere, right, for me, in terms of the power of geometry to make you feel connected to a much bigger intelligence
Yes.
that we are a part of. We're not separate from it, you know? And it's a deeply reassuring feeling when you begin to realize that everything is held together by a much bigger pattern of order than any of us have been taught to believe, you know?
Right.
So why is 5040 cool? Well, for loads of reasons, right? There's a sacred canon of number that John Michell found, which seems to, you know, explain so many of the proportions and ratios of the world around us, which I particularly just have a big passion for because I really love his work. I've Dimensions of Paradise there, one of my favorite books. So like this sacred canon of number is very meaningful. But let's be more specific, right? Why is 5040 meaningful? Well, if you get like the Earth and the Moon and you bring them down so that they tangent each other, and then all you have to do is draw a square to enclose the Earth, right? That's easy to do. And then you draw a circle by putting the pin in the center of the Earth and the pencil at the center of the Moon, and you spin a circle. Then you get this thing called a squared circle, right? And this is like where the square and the circle have an equal perimeter in this case, right? So like our Earth and our Moon basically express this thing called a squared circle. So my friends are like, yeah, so what, Geoff?
Yeah,
Boring,
square
right?
and
So
circle.
what? So what? Boring.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, actually, if you look at the qualities of the square and the circle, they're really interesting. So the square actually does represent the earthly, grounded, concrete, definite qualities of life, right? So it's like everything you know for certain, for definite, that you're 100% clear on. You can measure it exactly 100%. There's no room for error. And by the way, we need this aspect to life. Like if somebody's kind of like checking the technical equipment on the plane you're about to fly on, you don't want somebody channeling the Arcturians, you know, to make the, you know, you want.
Yeah, I calibrated these engines from the Starfleet commander from the Pleiades.
You
Yeah,
want them to be square in their consciousness, at least in that task, you know.
absolutely.
And then the circle represents, you know, like a mystery. Why? Because it's kind of has this transcendental number called pi, which never finishes and never ends. So just like you're talking about that gap, there's this gap in the circle that's irreconcilable, and it opens us to a mystery that we cannot know. And so the circle is like, you know, it represents like mystery, the unobtainable, the elusive, the invisible, the just can't grasp it, the out of reach, the, you know, the mysterious. All of those qualities are the circle, right? But the thing is, we are both of these things. You know, we are actually, as like humans, having this human experience, we have both a square aspect to our being and a circular aspect to our being. And we're all trying to bring these two aspects of our being. They're complementary, by the way. They're not opposites, you know. They complement each other. And our journey towards wholeness is trying to integrate these. So then where else does the square circle show up? Well, you know that lovely, like, Leonardo da Vinci...
Vitruvian Man.
Yeah, you know, so that expresses us both in circular nature, you know what I mean? So we have the circular side, you know, that's kind of the part of us that can open to the mystery and is comfortable with not knowing.
Yeah.
And then we have the concrete grounded, we have to know our shit, we have to be clear about what's going on.
Right.
And so that's why 5040 popping out of a crop circle isn't just a random number. It's not.
No.
It's not just like, oh, that's a cool coincidence. And these numbers, 5040, 864, 1296, you know, these pop out all the time. These formations, it's like they're continually pointing us back to a couple of recurring motifs. The squared circle probably being amongst the most primary of these symbols that are transmitted. And so we're continually being invited to bring into harmony these two attributes of our being, you know. Geez, I'm on a rant here, you know, but
no, it's great.
This is
it's
the
great.
trip that
but this is it, you see, because the
alien
alien.
With you, just on this trip, and then I'll end.
Go for it. Go for
rant, because it just feels right to share it.
Please
you
do.
know the platonic solids. You
Yes.
know those.
The cube and the tetrahedron and the,
Yeah,
you know.
exactly. They come out of Metatron's cube, you know,
They
of
do.
which was
Yep.
there's been some formations based on that theme.
I'll bring up diagrams so that the people watching, you know, they can see this. But yeah, we've got these four and then ether, haven't we? We've got the icosahedron going to dodecahedrons. We've got the five elements: earth, air, fire, water, ether.
Okay, I'm glad you said earth, air, fire, water, the elements, right? So I was goofing around one day, right? And I was adding up the total number of degrees on the faces of these platonic solids.
Right.
Actually, the guy that gave me the idea is a guy called Joe Dubs. He did a lovely graphic of it,
Okay.
where they have these, he just adds up like the number of degrees on a tetrahedron, I think, is 720. On a cube is 2160.
Yep.
On a octahedron, it's 1440, right?
Yeah.
And so if you add up the earth, air, fire, and water, okay? And I think it is earth, air, fire, and water. They're the elements that give us all life as we know it, right?
Yep. And it's four. It's four. That's a square. It's a fourfold.
Exactly.
Right.
That comes to 7920.
7920, which is the diameter of the Earth
Of
in
planet Earth,
English
the very
miles.
planet we're inhabitants on.
In English
right?
miles.
In English miles, exactly. Now, so then I was going, like, if you think about then so what's happening with the dodecahedron then? You know, like, why is that not included in my 7920? And I was messing around with, like, if you then take ether and air, which are the least tangible, if you think about it. They're kind of invisible. Fire you can see and you can burn yourself. Earth you can see and you can throw it around, you know. Water you can feel and see and drink and blah, blah, blah. But air is a little bit more elusive, isn't it? It's a bit like, what? I can't grab air. It's not concrete in the way like fire or earth is. Yeah. And what's ether? That's even more elusive and mysterious, right? Yeah. But the cool thing is, if you add up the dodecahedron, which I think is 6480, and the 1440 of the octahedron, you also get 7920. This blew me away. So then I was like, this coincides with the square and the circle, kind of, because it speaks to, there are two different ways of us being here now. We can just be the concrete, earth, air, fire, water, that's square, here I am. You know, I'm not going to entertain any nonsense. I'm not going to be open to any mystery. It's like, this is what it is, blah, blah, blah. And then there's the kind of like the, like just let go into the mystery. You know, that's where the dodecahedron takes you. You know what I mean? Yes. And they both sum up to the diameter of the Earth. So it's like we have a switch we can flick between being of the Earth and being of the heavens, you know? And so it's just a switch that you can click at any moment, and you can get access to becoming like an infinite field of consciousness commensurate with all that is, as Stan Groff says, you know, and like we all have this latent capacity in us. It's so this is how geometry is miraculous. You know, it opens us to... It does. It really does, it's not arguable. It's you know, once you with those numbers, they either fit or they don't. Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's what Plato called.
I think I am right in those numbers. I just feel like, when you're being recorded, you're
Yeah. No, I've got them the wrong way. I've
Okay.
said 7920 is 8 times 9 times 10 times 11 when I've been in an interview before, and it's the other way
Yeah.
round,
It
you know,
is
and stuff like
no,
that.
I'm right on that. It is
You're right.
7920. Okay, we probably should close off soon, but can I just give a curtain closer to this, right? Just to
Before you do,
Yeah.
I've got to pick up on a couple of things that you said, all right?
Sure.
Right, okay. Air and dodecahedron, ether.
Yeah.
Okay,
Air and ether.
the word psyche comes from the root word psychane, which means to breathe or to blow. Breath. We're back
Yeah.
to holotropic breath work.
Yeah.
Okay? We're back to Wim Hof.
Yeah, yeah.
We're circling this conversation. now,
Yeah,
right, back to the
exactly.
beginning. Okay, so I wanted to bring that in because breath is the most mysterious. The Native Americans, the reason that they used to sit in a circle and smoke the pipe was because the smoke makes the air visible, and it works in
right.
spirals.
Yeah.
It goes into the air in spirals.
It's all geometric, of course.
It's all geometric, of course.
Yeah.
Right? So the smoke played an important role with the way it went out to make something which was invisible, which animates us, visible for a moment.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
When you go into a crop circle, it looks like a breath, a wind has blown it.
Yes, it does.
Right?
It does. You mean the wind blowing through the crop, that gorgeous feeling?
And I've seen that. And when my
Yeah.
first ever crop circle, I think I told you the story when my teacher laid me down and I saw it all lay down quickly, like a wind going through it. I saw it the first crop circle I ever went in with this kind of altered state I went into.
Yeah.
So it's become. We're talking about consciousness. We're talking about mind, right? And what we constantly share, exchange in and out of the outside world into the inside world, and this reciprocity is breath.
Yeah.
It's air, and there's more to it. What it's telling us, in my view, is there's more to it than just oxygen. If we analyze it, there's something else, right?
Yes.
And that's the ether, or the chi, as the Chinese would put it.
Yeah.
Right, and it's mysterious.
There's lovely words around it. I know that Stan Groff from Holotropic, he speaks a lot about pneuma. Like, he goes into the sort of the etymological, or where the history of the words around breath. And so I think in Greek it might be pneuma, or Latin it might be spiritus. And it all means spirit.
It all means spirit.
So breathing is actually like the translation in ancient languages. I should know it off by heart, but if you look up the Greek word for breath and the Latin word for breath, they both are synonymous with spirit. So we are breathing the spirit. We're not just breathing oxygen to stay alive, but it's that invisible, ethereal element that we breathe in through this process of,
Have you ever heard of the Hebrew 4 letters for God, YHWH?
Yahweh, is it, or
Yahweh?
Yeah.
But there are no vowels, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so
yeah.
breathe in.
Yeah.
So it's actually the sound of the breath going in and out. The word for God in Hebrew.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah.
That comes from the book called the Spell of the Sensuous by David Abrams, one of my most favourite books.
Oh, cool. Yeah. But listen, I just want to close off on my trip with the platonic solids, right?
Please do.
So I had this mind-bending trip to London, actually, right? Like, I was kind of on a work trip, right? So it was pretty straightforward. I had to go to London. I was meeting some people to talk about like my advertising thing, right? And I love London, by the way. Any excuse. I haven't been there in so long, since before the pandemic. I really want to get back. But I used to go there regularly, okay? And it's a bit of fun because, I get up early in the morning, 5 o'clock, get on the plane, and I'm not really thinking about advertising. I'm thinking of the platonic solids and the golden ratio, right? And I kid you not, I was kind of joking with myself, saying if I was on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, right? And the final question for the £1 million was, Geoff, can you recite the golden ratio to 13 digits? I was like, oh my God, I wouldn't be able to. So I'm disclosing the total nerd I am now. So I get onto Google and I start learning off the golden ratio, just goofing around. Most people going through security, they're kind of thinking about like their coffee and their croissant, and I'm here going like, okay, so what's 1.618033 or whatever? I'm trying to go through the numbers, you know, and then I was doing. That's where I began summing up these platonic solids, because I had a little book with me and I had all these kind of numbers with the platonic solids, and that's where I was on the plane to London when I had this epiphany about the 7920 showing up both as the ethereal solids and the earthly solids, and they both sum up to the diameter of the earth. Blew my mind, right? And I was learning the golden ratio. So I'm kind of quite fired up. I get quite lifted up and invigorated, okay? I was like, whoa, like, gee, fuck, you know, like, I mean, it really excites me, this stuff, you know. I was like, wow, that's a jackpot, you know. And I check into my hotel in Kensington, just a random, by the way, this trip, I just went onto booking.com, booked any hotel, kind of, I don't know London that well at the time.
And you ended up in Kensington. It's not a smart part of town.
Kensington High Street, I was at. Yeah, it was actually, it was quite lovely, you know.
Harrods down the road.
I think it was just a standard hotel, you know, like, anyway, I check in, I walk out of the hotel, and I'm letting my sort of geometric self kind of like dissolve a little bit, and I have to go get the train, I have to work out like where I go to my meeting, so I'm getting back into the real world. And I walk by this place called the Kensington Dentist, right? And I kid you not, in the window, right, there's a dodecahedron, and in the center of the dodecahedron is the symbol for phi, the golden ratio. And it just went poof. And like Gary, I tell you, I needed a lie down, man, because nobody in the universe knew what I was spinning in my head that day.
It was you, for you personally.
Right? And I took a photo of it. Like, I was just like, boom. And I was like, oh. Like, and so the point I want to make is when you play with these principles, what happens is there's a massive amplification of coincidence and synchronicity. Right. And like sometimes you have them and they're so strong.
Oh, they're
like
scary.
It really feels like that there is some form of communication happening that's coming from behind a veil that's kind of like signaling to you. You know, and like, I might sound like a crazy mental person here, but I don't feel like one, to be honest, because
it's like, so real.
It's so real. And it's like, there was nothing else. And I was really running these principles hard in my consciousness from 5 o'clock that morning. And just like, for that to manifest, boom, right there. I'll try to get you the photo. You can put it in.
That would be great.
You know?
That would be great.
And it just is. So I wanted to share that with anybody that does happen to. I don't know how long we've been talking. I hope somebody listens this far into our chat. But
I'm sure they will.
I feel that like there's a deep divine hand that's reaching towards us all the time. And one of the ways it reaches us is through synchronicities and coincidences, you know? And there's a spectrum of coincidences, by the way. You know, like sometimes you could say, like, you know, you think of a red car, and then all you see are red cars. Okay, I know there's confirmation bias. I know there's a thing called patternicity as well.
We know that.
So we need to be careful that we don't go bananas, right? But there's another quality of coincidence that you will feel it deep in your being.
You know when it hits you.
You don't need anyone to convince you. It's like it touches you in such a deep.
It's actually, I would say, it's so big. It's so big that you the job is to convince yourself that you're not mad because it's so big.
Exactly. Yeah, and like, isn't that one of the most miraculous things that we can all feel? Like everybody's had their version of that, you know, and we're trained in our culture, sadly, to kind of dismiss them.
Oh, it means nothing.
I want to become a kind of a champion for those experiences, just to say, let's trust them, let's celebrate them, let's share them with each other, because there's something about that synchronistic manifestation of something that happens in the internal realm of your consciousness being made manifest in material reality that is just so sublime, actually, you know, that it opens you to a gorgeous sense of connection with something way bigger than yourself. You know, it's gorgeous. And it kind of feels like it always comes with this feeling of, you're right on track, Geoff. You know, like
Yeah,
stay
it's
with
like
this.
Michael
Put an
Glickman used to say, it's
endorsement.
like the universe is tipping its cap to you.
Yeah, it has that feeling to it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
My teacher used to say two things, right? He used to say, I used to say, where's the truth? You know, is it outside of us or is it inside of us? Is it the subjective? Like, I remember when I was on your podcast, I quoted Kierkegaard, about that, the world collapsing. And he said it's at a point where both meet, where both places meet.
Nice.
Right? Where the so your inside had been working on all this stuff, and then the outside met you at the dentist's.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay, and then he also said this, right? He said on the basic earthly level, and I want to use an analogy of what you've just been talking about not an analogy, actually a fact about what you've been talking about. So the diameter, the 7920, the diameter of the circle that is our Earth, is one side of a square. Yeah. And it represents something which is finite. It has a beginning and an end, right? It's one dimensional with 2 points.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
And so that represents our earthly life, our earthly path. We know we had a beginning, and we know that we're going to have an end. It's inevitable. But the question is do we have a spirit that is eternal? And do we have a relationship to an eternal spirit, which is represented by the circles? So I've come to see the circle as a relationship, and pi as a relationship between the finite and the infinite. And
Beautiful.
that we are in that, right? This is something which came to me on my journey of how can I get my head around this, right? Rather than just being numbers, 3.1459264. Yeah. Nerdy quoting off 10 places. Yeah. And so obviously we know Jung talked about synchronicity, and he wrote a book. I've got it on my shelf about synchronicity and the synchronicities he came across, with the scarab beetle, the classic story of the therapy with the scarab beetle and so on, which have been a crop circle, of course. My teacher said this to me, right? I said, so we all think about cause and effect, which is the science thing, right? Which we need the square for to know our 100% of, right? This is the cause and effect side of ourselves, right? But the ethereal part of ourselves, the dodecahedron, the circular part of ourselves, right? The other 7920, it's not cause and effect. He said it's cause and cause in synchronicity. There's just causes which lead to synchronicity. So your thinking and cogitating and doing that was a cause that led to 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 a synchronicity. And it's hard to get your head about because we're in the other side, right, where cause and effect happen.
I get you.
But there are states of consciousness where you can go, oh shit, that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And then it's like, what does that say about consciousness? And then, the idea of belief, and then what can you bring into manifestation through the power of consciousness then, you know? And if we really believed in the power we hold, who knows what we could attain, Like it's almost like we've been so dumbed down or something by modern culture that we've forgotten about a lot of our latent capacities,
Well, we're back to Wim Hof. We're not supposed. We're supposed to die if we get in the ice water. But with the breath, we can now measure our skin and go, well, we're not getting any colder, right? They injected the guy and 12 of his students with E. coli, and they didn't get sick.
I know.
This is not supposed to be possible according to the square science. But according to him going into his infinite consciousness and tapping into his potential with breath, the impossible happened. And I think this is what this paradigm is all about, with crop circles, with Wim Hof, with consciousness studies, with geometry, and we're moving towards even with meat. Even with actually we're supposed to have this relationship to death in a way in life, which is healthy, which is recognizing it and honoring it for what it is. Like, I think we're coming back to an older way of thinking, but having gone through a modern way of thinking that maybe it'll bring us
in that. I know what you're getting at. And it feels it. I I can feel into what you're saying there, and it feels right for me as well. You know,
I can't quite put my finger on like the description of it. I try and wrestle with it, but there's
something there, you know, and it's like it's even beyond, like, you know, these algorithms and stuff we need to get off. It's like our power is never going to come from giving. It's like we're wasting our most precious resource by spending our awareness on these kind of like vortexes that sort of suck us of our life force, you know. And like, it's only when you go inward and you kind of dwell in the energy that's your birthright, really, you know, that you reconnect with your power. You know, there's like wouldn't it be exciting to think if there's some new revolution or rebellion or something, you know, where there's a return to true consciousness, where people kind of like totally tap into. I mean, to be honest, I'm as much a slave to these things as as anyone. You know, I'm absolutely you know, tapped in. I'm not making myself out to be free of it at all. No. So just to be clear, it's through my slavery to these modern technologies that my awakening kind of is being revealed to me. You know, like, as in, it's like, Geoff, the answer is not in that Black Mirror, man. I know that for a fact. You know, I'm chronically addicted to it, and I spend way too many hours on it. Yeah. But I know that that's not where freedom's going to come from. You know what I mean? It's an inside job.
Yeah. I mean, knowing that, you know, I read Johann Hari's book recently about, you know, the power, the psychology that's gone into making us addicted to these things, these little red dots that, you know, we're searching for likes, we're going back on for affirmation that make us feel confident for a minute and give us that little dopamine hit. And all of these things have been done to us to make us slaves to it. And even when we know it, you still have to be in it. You're still getting caught by it, and you're still getting tricked by it. Even if you think, it won't get me now, I know the trick. It will. Yeah. It'll trick you. Don't live under any illusion.
God, totally.
It's got the power on us.
Yeah.
It really has.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's impossible to live in this world right now without being in a hypocrisy bubble.
Yes.
You know, I can't talk about the power of vicious corporations and own an Apple computer.
Yeah.
I can't do it. I can't Google something and go, I can't say ChatGPT is going to kill us all. Let me just get it to write this little description for me.
I know. Or complain about centralized algorithms and then be happy that this is going to be put up on YouTube.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It's nuts, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so nuts. But you know what? I actually think we can lean into that a little bit, right? Because you said something earlier about, do you remember the early internet, right? And there was kind of a promise that, like, we were going to free information and we were going to be
freedom.
Like a global connected populace, you know? And I actually think that that promise still stands, right? And so what's happened is like this mass monopolization of the internet and this kind of mediation of a central authority that now basically like intervenes in our communications, right? So like the idea of like peer-to-peer communities coming together without any like mediator, like a centralized algorithm, you know, we can, and there are promises, there's promising developments now, you know. I quite like the Bitcoin movement, not crypto to be clear, it's a scam, but Bitcoin has a very exciting kind of ethos behind it, where this kind of decentralized way of reclaiming the internet and having these peer-to-peer ways of communicating, because the technology is amazing, you know, like the way we can communicate with people from all over the world, but if we could just get the kind of manipulation of these centralized kind of monopolies out of it, the technology itself is beautiful, and then we can be freer.
It needs to. It's like again, I quote my teacher often, right? That the heart needs to be the master and the head needs to be the servant.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we got it inverted, right? The head is the master and the heart's the servant. We need to flip it back, okay? And so these tools are there to serve us, like governments. They're administrators, they're filing clerks, right? They're not sovereign people who print money unlimited for themselves and then get us all to pay taxes so we've got fuck all left. We don't give them out. We give these people our power, surrogate power they get from our votes and that, and then we give them legitimacy to fuck us. We can take back that power, right? And and they go, oh, it's a revolutionary. Yeah, it is.
Exactly.
Because they're controlling something that we've created as a tool to serve us all.
Yeah.
And they're manipulating. So it's not. And I like Bitcoin because it's back to the old money, right? Like gold. It was before it was the fiat currency was abandoned. There was a finite amount of gold.
Yeah.
Therefore, there was a finite amount of money.
Yeah.
And you couldn't just keep printing it ad infinitum.
That's the biggest scam that's ever been pulled on any of us, by the way.
Totally.
Yeah, I'm really like I'm going through a second awakening, by the way. It's almost like I think crop circles were nearly my training for Bitcoin, because at the dinner party, I tell you, if I can't mention crop circles,
it's
I
Bitcoin.
definitely can't mention Bitcoin. You know what I mean? That's like that's out of bounds right now, you know. But it's a beautiful technology, and it's remarkable. By engaging with it, you realize the scam of the current monetary system, you know.
It's such a scam.
And it is. I mean, I was told as a kid, money doesn't fall out of thin air. It doesn't grow on trees, and you can't get money out of thin air.
But it does these days.
Actually, when you look into it, that's exactly where it comes from. It's
Banks
just
print
created.
Banks just create it.
Literally out of
it's
thin
all,
air.
and it's all created as debt. And my son Aaron, my oldest son, he's 37 now. We used to have these from the age of 8. We used to have these. I used to chat about all this stuff with him. Right?
Yeah.
And he's taken it a stage further. He knows more about the Bradbury pound and how the money used to be transacted.
Oh, really?
And how you need to have a conversation with my son.
Wow.
He is so far advanced on. I go to my son now. Oh, he made a fortune on Bitcoin, my son.
Does he? Brilliant.
And you'll also love him because he runs a coffee business.
Oh, cool.
Like,
I love coffee.
My son, you just said it. That's why I said you'll love him, right? Because my middle son, the one who plays the kora, he's a master coffee roaster. He's just come back from Colombia.
Fabulous.
He can look at a coffee bean and go, yeah, that's from the so-and-so genus, and that needs to be roasted for this many seconds. Honest to God, he's going to teach people now. He's starting up a business to teach people.
I love it.
And my other son, I live in a flat above a coffee. Underneath me is my son's business.
No way,
right?
Cool.
Which is all the coffee machines, right?
Oh my God! Next time I'm in Bristol, I'm going to have to call in to that coffee shop.
You got to call in. You got to call in.
Yeah, totally. Because that's where I fly when I'm going to Wiltshire. I land in Bristol.
You got to call in. You got to call in. We're going to say my son. It's called the Triple Roast Company. I'll take you up there. They go like he posts videos on Instagram, and they're all around like sipping coffee out of like little. It's like a wine taste. They'll go, yes, it's a little bit. It's got certain overtones.
I would go for that. I'd be all in.
When they were learning, I used to come down in the morning, right, and they'd have all these. It was like Heisenberg's meth lab. They'd have all these things where they were doing all these extractions. I go around his house and he's weighing the beans and. I just get it. I mean,
I love it.
You'll love that.
Hey, listen, Gary, I'm going to have to head off soon, but I wanted to ask one question by way of closing, right? It's just, you mentioned your teacher, right? Like many times your teacher. And I really like the way you refer to your teacher. Like there's a nice energy, a kind of a reverence when you speak about your teacher. And I know you shared a lot about him on the podcast we did with Scott, and so there's a lot of detail there, you know. But I just had a curious question. You don't have to answer this if it's not appropriate, but I'm just wondering, like, are you still in connection with that teacher? Are you still in contact? Or was that more like, you know, the way the hero's journey, the guide comes along at the right time, and then when you've got the teachings, you move on from the guide? It just, I sense that's
what happened.
Is it literally that? So it's like the perfect time, the perfect teacher, the perfect guide, and then just is he still around? He's still alive? And
no idea. Just went poof. That's fascinating. And how do you feel about that? Sad. Do you? I miss him, man. I miss him. Oh, I could cry now. There's no one else in the world I could talk to that gets me, that gets it. Beautiful. He's so, oh God. You know, you just meet one individual in your life, and it wasn't an easy relationship because I was hard work. Okay. I must have aged this guy, and he's a master. Okay, yeah. When I look back now at the hard time I gave him, because I was like, yeah, I get you. But it seems like he was really good for you, and you got what you needed when you needed it. He was a true master. There's no question about it. This man had another foot in the other side.
Wow,
He had
yeah.
one foot in the other side and one foot here. Okay.
Yeah.
And he would do
I
the
kinda get
wackiest
that.
of things sometimes that would drive me nuts.
Mm.
And then you know, a little bit down the road, you go, "Oh, you're so fucking clever.
Yeah. Yeah,
How did
yeah.
you know that?" You know. Yeah.
Hey, Gary, I'm going to have to pop off here.
Geoff, this has been fantastic, mate.
It's been amazing. Thank you so much. I've loved it. I've loved it.
too.
Let's stay in touch, yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
Nice one, man.
I want to
That was
come
great.
to Dublin, and
Yeah, you bet. I'll get you that pint of like 0.0 Guinness.
I'm coming, mate. I'm definitely gonna come. You can take me around some pubs
You're
with
welcome,
it 0.0,
man. We will
and I
have
want to watch.
fun. You
We
bet.
will have fun.
Yeah.
I'm looking
Nice
forward
one.
to it. Geoff,
All right.
God bless, my friend.
Thanks a million. See you
Take care.
soon. Thanks.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.